All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday night, so you know what time it is, and that's for the Friday Night Sports Recap weekly show here on Sportswire Radio to speak all the latest happenings here in the world of sports. Certainly, a lot of people's brackets have certainly been bursted here over the past hour or so. We'll get into some WBC, Major League Baseball. Met fans' bubbles have been certainly bursted. NFL, is he in? Is he out when it comes to Aaron Rodgers? NHL, plus much, much more with three of my guys here. That is Chris Pizzay of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, and Rob Maraska. And gentlemen, happy Friday and happy St. Patrick's Day for those that may celebrate.
What's up?
What's going on?
Hey, guys.
Well, obviously, I have no doubt when the Brute Force Brad Weiss comes on here in a little while, we'll certainly talk a lot about college basketball and who's actually got a bracket left. But for the baseball fans here, the WBC has certainly been the talk because obviously for Met fans, it looks like the Mets bursted as bubbled for their season when it comes to Edwin Diaz, who's got a torn patella tendon, is out for the season. And I'm going to you, Rob Maraska, first because you're the Met guy and you're the guy, obviously, that's probably got this on the mind more than anyone else right now. So, I mean, talk about how significant of a blow this is for the New York Mets now that Edwin Diaz, star closer, is out for the season.
Devastating blow, of course, to the Mets. The funny thing is, I used to be on and off about the WBC, and this year I really, really got into it. And I was watching, the USA Colombia game when the news came on about Diaz. And it just, the bubble just deflated. I couldn't concentrate on that game anymore. And, all night I was just thinking about it. And, the WBC means a lot to these guys from these other countries, okay? It means a lot, more than it does to us. So we have to understand that. And we've had a couple days to think about it. It's a big, big, big loss for the Mets. And you know what? Now, when I was on Chris's show a couple weeks ago, all three of us picked the Mets to win the division. I don't know if the Mets are going to win the division now. I'm worried about the Braves. I'm worried about the Mets bullpen. They do, of course, the Mets have depth. They definitely do. Robertson could be the closer. They can make a trade, although I think, if they're going to make a trade, the other teams are really going to take advantage now because they know that the Mets need to do something about that bullpen, but they have options. So it's just, I don't know how it's going to affect the season yet, but it's a huge, huge blow.
All right, here, and those that have joined us here that know about blows and collecting things is sort of our guest on Wednesday's show, Mr. Skulls, the Soul Hunter via the EWF, and he says Skulls here. Appreciate that, Skulls. And Justin Gianelli, obviously you're our other Mets fan. I'll get to Chris in a second, but Met fans definitely their brackets very well could have been bursted when it comes to their season here with star closer Edwin Diaz. So, I mean, where does this team go from here? Is it like what Rob Maraska said, the team has depth, or do they make a trade? Or, I mean, where do the Mets go from here?
So, of course, you can't deny how devastating this is for the Mets and how big of a deal this is. But I'm gonna take the optimistic approach here. After thinking about it for the last couple of days, it's been close to 48 hours since this happened, and thinking about it, I think what you said could go both ways. I do think that they can be in the market for a trade, probably more around the trade deadline in July, at the end of July. But even though he won't give you Edwin Diaz production, I don't feel 100% terrible about David Robertson as my closer. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be dominant, but I still feel like the Mets have a level of competency in terms of who's going to close games. Adam Ottavino was pretty good last year too. So if Buck wants to interchange those guys, it's not the end of the world. The biggest thing the Mets lose here is their superior advantage. Name another team that really has a dominant closer. There's one, and that's Emmanuel Clase, the Guardians closer. He's the only one who I would consider a dominant closer. And if you think about recent memory, teams that won the World Series, not exactly the best closers. The Astros had Ryan Presley last year, good closer. Wouldn't say a guy that scares you. 21, the Braves. Will Smith wasn't all that good. He happened to get hot in the postseason. The Braves just happened to get hot in the bullpen in the postseason. In 20, the Dodgers had Kenley Jansen, but it got to a point where they couldn't trust him. And guys like Julio Urias were closing out games. 19, the Nationals, we know how bad their bullpen was. Their bullpen was an absolute disaster. Daniel Hudson and Sean Doolittle decided to get hot for a couple of weeks, and it worked out. 18, the exception, because Craig Kimbrell was still a really good closer at that point. But my point being is the Met bullpen is still pretty solid. They're going to have good options here. And there's guys who are going to have to step up. Like Drew Smith is going to have to be very good this year, right? I expect Ottavino to be pretty good like he was last year. I have a level of comfortability with David Robertson because he's a veteran. We'll see what we get out of Brooks Raley. He was good with Tampa, but first time in a Met uniform, so we'll see how he is. And the Mets got a fortunate piece of good news, even though he's going to be shut down for about a month, and that's Bryce Montes de Oca, who's gonna probably start the year at AAA. But I think a guy with a lively arm that you could really see making an impact later in the year, provided he comes back in a timely manner. And then you have guys like John Curtis, who's coming off Tommy John surgeries, looked tremendous in spring training. I think the bullpen will be okay. Unfortunately, they're not going to have the dominant closer like we thought we would with Edwin. But overall, I don't think this is a bad bullpen by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, Justin Gianelli takes the high road. Rob Maraska sort of takes the in-between road. Chris Pizzea, obviously you watch from afar. Talking Rivals, I'm sure we'll speak quite a bit about this on Monday on Sportswire Radio and some other platforms that we can hear certainly what you guys have to say. And, talk about this loss. Obviously, it's a huge loss no matter how you spin it for the New York Mets, and it'll certainly be interesting to see how this team kind of recovers from this and where they go from here.
Yeah, I'm with Justin. Of course, having Edwin Diaz, the most dominant closer in baseball, gives them that advantage. But they still have a very strong bullpen even without him. And they got Robinson, who's got obviously closing experience in the past. So I think they're okay. And like you guys said, come July, June, if things are getting a little shaky, you go out there and you make your trade. And I'm sure Pittsburgh's going to fall out, so Bedard's going to be available, and maybe even if you want to go really big there, you go for the big blockbuster and you throw Brian Reynolds into the mix, and you get a nice big blockbuster deal. You get your big bat, you get your big closer for the back end of the bullpen, and you make your run for the rest of the season. But I'm not too concerned about it. And when you look at the rest of the division, who's closing for the Braves? Right, they got Iglesias last year. He fell out. He totally fell apart in with the Angels last year. So he was not that consistent. He got really good
for the Braves.
Yeah, he got really great for the Braves, but you don't know. You don't know what you're going to get this year. So I don't think it's that bad. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong. It's a horrible loss when you lose that. But when you look at the rest of the bullpen, they're solid. And when you look at the rest of the division,
who's closing for Philly? Dominguez?
Yeah, right. The Phillies are deep in the bullpen, right? They added a couple of pieces this year, so I like them. But other than that, I still like the Mets to win that division. And I still thought I said it on the show when we were talking about the Mets. I still think they're going to make a big deal at some point. They're not going to do it last year and pick, and get these minor pieces for the bench. They're going to make a major move this year for a bat. At least that's what I think. Hopefully, that's if everybody else is healthy and everything's going great for you guys. I think they're going to make a big move for a bat this year. It's not going to be a bench guy either. So
okay, but we talk about bat, but the Mets are without a closer now. All three of yous and Rob Maraska kind of is positive here, and I'm sure the Brute Force Brad Weiss later on will have a point toward the end of the show on this, but you guys all seem positive. But I look at it, I mean, Edwin Diaz, in a lot of cases, could have been the New York Mets' most valuable player last season. He had arguably maybe the greatest season of any single season closer the Mets have ever had, and we still think here the Mets are going to win the National League East. I mean, this is still a significant loss here.
It is
I
a
agree.
loss.
I think it's 50-50 because I do think Atlanta's very good. But I just don't think the drop off is going to be as big as people think, because let's remember one thing. There's no guarantee Edwin Diaz was going to be as good as he was last year. He had almost a historic season for a closer. You got to remember that.
I agree with you on that.
Strikeout percentage and his ERA being pretty low. He was bound to have a slight bit of regression, even though he looked sharp in the couple appearances we saw with Team Puerto Rico. He looked like he was the Edwin Diaz we saw last year. There's just no guaranteeing he would have been that. Just expect that production again is a little bit of wishful thinking.
I agree with you. I mean, he looked pretty good for his 2 finishes in the WBC, but you're right. He could have had a drop off. Last year could have been a career year for him on the Mets. We'll never know. We're not going to know. He's out. That's it. So we got to move on. I'm looking at everyone on Twitter and on social media, and they're all going nuts about, the WBC. Like I said before, now I understand. To these other countries, it's a big, big deal. I mean, 60 million people watch Japan. Think about that. All over the world. So it's a big deal. I don't know what you guys think about the WBC now, but it's not going anywhere. They're not gonna because of this one incident. It's definitely not going to stop.
No, my opinion of it does not change whatsoever. I've very much enjoyed the WBC, and you mentioned the Japan viewership. I mean, there was major viewership for Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic too. I mean, for these countries, especially, it's one thing to get the nice paycheck from these major league teams and these players. Of course, enjoy that, but it's also too, there's a level of pride putting that country on your chest, like putting the USA on the chest, or for these guys, Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic, wherever you're from. There's a sense of pride representing your country, your flag, and these guys love it. They do.
So even with the injury here, you guys still think the WBC it's good to have? You wouldn't change anything?
It was a freak accident.
Yeah,
especially it wasn't him pitching; it was in the celebration.
Well, let me throw this out there because it was a headline in the New York Post earlier this week, and certainly some other people have thrown it out there. John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. You've certainly heard it, I'm sure, on Twitter. I don't follow social media as much when it comes to certainly those who certainly are armchair quarterbacks. I'd be the first to admit, but I have to throw it out there, and even Chris can jump in. I mean, are the New York Mets cursed with an injury like this of Edwin Diaz? Are they cursed? I mean, the New York Post posed that question.
Come on.
All right, we'll jump in.
There's no curses. It was just unfortunate. It just,
Well, we say curses in baseball. I mean, the Red Sox, the Cubs, the White Sox. I mean, the Indians, some would say, are still cursed. I mean, there are curses. People do believe in that stuff. People do believe in jinxes.
I think maybe this is just a possibility, but it's still not fair to the players. I was going to say maybe have a limit of how many each team can lose to the WBC. Like how many players can they send? Like the Mets sent like their whole lineup, which it's great. It's great that they want to do it. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but something like this happens, and so maybe put a limit like 5 or 6, but then it's not fair to the guys that want to go in. So that's the sad part. So I don't know if I don't think there's a perfect way. I know on the radio they were talking about maybe putting it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a great idea too.
You wouldn't
Because
like it in December where there's kind of a lull in baseball and people kind of
but
feel.
here's the thing.
It's not going to work when it goes up against football, especially in America. It might work for these other countries, of course, but you also want to have the viewership in America too.
Right.
And you know what else? Remember, that's when the free agency process is going on. So how's that going to affect free agency? What if someone goes out there and gets hurt and they blow a big contract?
He may
or
not
they
even
might
have his
not
contract yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Right,
I
a
mean.
player may not-
Blow getting a big contract because of injury. So, but I've heard, like I read that Ron Darling said it should be, the time should be changed too. But when, like Justin said, it can't,
There's no
it can't
perfect
go.
time.
Yeah, it can't go up against football in the United States. There's no
Yeah,
way.
but I mean, I would make the case right now it's going up against college basketball, and a lot of people right now even casual people follow college basketball for this time of year, these 4 or 5 days, and I mean, you got the NBA
that's
going.
true.
Listen, I
But
would
also
even argue
too, it's also too not every year the WBC,
Yeah.
right? So the hardcore baseball fan instead of watching spring training, you get to watch these games that players are playing with absolute meaning. I've heard the idea, and I don't agree with it, but I've heard the idea of shortening the season and taking a couple weeks off and get rid of the All-Star game a particular year and do it in July.
They're not going to do that though in the middle of the year.
No,
Yeah.
I heard that too. But there's no way that's going to happen. No,
Probably
no
not.
major
Yeah, I like.
lets that happen.
I'll be honest. I think this is the best time to do it. Before the season starts. I mean, because after the season, you're talking about free agency. Number one, number two, you got guys that have been playing in the maybe in the playoffs, the World Series, and now they're going to play another couple more weeks in this. So I don't know if that's going to happen either. So I think this is the best time to do it, and and just deal with the injuries that are going to happen, because injuries happen no matter what, whether they're playing.
All right, so let me ask a follow-up question then. Let's say hypothetically the injury happens during spring training, and let's say walks off the mound or something fluky happens during spring training. Do you think it's a different reaction or a different feeling when it comes to Edwin Diaz? Let's say he's out for the season, but only at the instances it's during spring training, during a game or something after an inning. Would there be a different reaction, you think, rather than he gets injured on a freak celebration in the WBC?
No, totally. No doubt. I mean, listen, you can make the case for the Dodgers here. One having a severe injury, one not being a severe injury. Gavin Lux tears his ACL in spring training, and Freddie Freeman pulls a hamstring in the WBC. Right? I mean, injuries can happen no matter where you are in the baseball field. Hell, Mike Soroka tore his Achilles walking to the clubhouse. I mean, it happens. It's just unfortunate, and the nature of it is just you can't predict.
No, you definitely can't predict, and obviously, certainly Met fans are certainly disappointed regardless. Nevertheless, as Edwin Diaz is out for the season, certainly Yankees have had their own troubles with Carlos Rodon. Chris, any thoughts on that? I know we didn't get a chance to hear it from this past week's Talking Rival show. Obviously, you were at some better places, some better places out there in the world to enjoy, rather than certainly, I'm sure, talking about that. But it seems like Yankees are optimistic about a Carlos Rodon situation here, and give me your thoughts on where we are with that. The other big injury here in New York right now for baseball.
Yeah, they think he'll be back, I think, by the end of April, early May. So I don't think it's that bad. But, this is after Montas is, you found out about him. He's going to be probably out till, July or August. So that means two guys in the starting five. And then you had two bullpen guys go down too. So, now you're talking four guys in the, two in the rotation, two in the bullpen that you're going to start with, start the season without. So yeah, you're testing your depth pretty quickly, but thankfully we got Herman and we got Schmidt to handle the 4 and the 5. They're not, it's not ideal, but now you got, your top three is Cole, Severino, and Cortez. So that's not a bad top three. And then you top it off with Herman and Schmidt 4 and 5. So it's not horrible. the bullpen was deep already. So if you're too short, that's not horrible. You just don't want it to be too long into the season. But I think the Yankees will be all right. It's not out for the season like Diaz is, unfortunately. And
Yeah, I guess end of April you can live with it. Realistically, obviously the weather's always kind of inclement. So what are you looking at? 5 starts, maybe 6 if you're lucky. So, I mean, certainly Yankee fans can tolerate that. And for both of you guys, I think we touched upon it very briefly last week on the air in sort of an extended show with you guys. Obviously, we were missing some parts, and also Randy Dillon, who's with us usually, he's on assignment. He'll be back next week. But for you guys, Carlos Rodon out to, let's say, end of April. That optimistic for you guys in terms of the Yankee season overall?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's not that bad. It could have been a lot worse. Look at the Mets. Jose Quintana is going to be out till at least July. So there's another Met injury. So for the Yankees, I think that's the best of the worst for them. So, that's not too bad.
For you, Justin.
Yeah, I agree. If you're getting Carlos Rodon back late April, the Yankees will be in good shape. Clark Schmidt, Domingo Germán covering the back of that rotation for a few starts. So, I mean, obviously longer for one of them because, obviously, it's going to be impossible to count on Montas at all this year. So maybe Clark Schmidt can earn his keeps in the rotation. Maybe Germán pitches well and he stays in the rotation once Rodon comes back. But they'll be able to hold the fort down. The one spot that they're in trouble in right now is center field, and that's because of Harrison Bader being down, and
right.
He's gonna be shut down for a while. And we know how obliques are. Obliques can take a long time. I mean, listen, injuries are piling up for both teams. You mentioned the Quintana injury. Fortunately, the Mets have David Peterson and Tyler McGill. Kodai Senga was dealing with some finger tendonitis, but he pitched a couple days ago in spring training, so not much to worry about. What we should be talking about is Brandon Nimmo.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, I got a chance to listen to what Buck said post game. They don't feel too worried about this. Brandon said he was feeling pretty good. But they're still going to look at it tomorrow.
Rob Moroska, I saw you wanted to go in there. Jump ahead.
No, I heard that too. What Justin said, his ankle. Even Nimmo said, he's not too worried about it. He feels good. They're going to get, an image done tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. But, we're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna have to freak out about that.
All right, we'll certainly see. Also, want to give a shout out to Joseph Bostrom. Joseph G. Bostrom says, "Gentlemen, how are you?" Obviously, he's got the Rocky photo. I'm sure he'll be looking to talk a lot of college basketball as everybody else when the brute force Brad Weiss jumps in. He also says Bader out 6 weeks, probably more. Hopefully the Nimmo injury isn't bad, which you guys kind of covered here. Basically, you don't think it's going to be too bad.
No, I watched the video. I watched the video a couple times because I didn't happen to see it live. I know the game was on SNY. It did look awkward. But like I said in the group chat, anyone who's played baseball, you've had an awkward slide once or twice. It's gonna hurt like a you know what for a couple of days. But this is probably hopefully it's nothing more than like a week or so. I was even, just resigned to he probably won't be there for opening day, but not much more than that. Maybe the Mets catch a break.
I want to bring up a comment, and we'll certainly do that here in a second. Also, news here, which I'll get to when it comes to Rick Pitino when Brad Weiss comes on, because he has a little bit of a connection to the St. John's program. So I'll wait here because I've got Rob Moroska, and we're doing baseball, and I have actually a comment from somebody, which I'm going to tie into. So it actually will be a good time here. So I want to get to Carlos Arturo Chavez the second here first, because he had a comment that he wanted to send me a message to, which I want to read off actually from Carlos, and I'll read off his comments on Facebook. And Carlos also is a fixture in the Sports Authorities group. You see him also with Northeast Streaming Sports, Certainly, we've been a part of them in the past. And he says, "Hey, man, remember last season before Mets entered the playoffs, I said the Mets should trade or move on from Edwin Diaz or Jacob deGrom. You all called me crazy and just blowing steam. Well, I did change my mind about the signing of Diaz, but this injury is no good. The season hasn't started, and know that the Mets aren't going to be forced to depend on offense. Offense, which they've had issues with since 2018, namely runners in scoring position. Let's see what the Mets can do. Going to be a crazy season again." Then he also goes on here in the comments for public, says, even if it's not a bad ankle, he should chill for 4 to 6 weeks. Don't rush back. Get a few guys sometime in the majors. Now, for you guys here, Carlos has been a fixture with us here on Sportswire over the past couple years, and certainly, what do you guys make of what he had to say? Certainly, it could be some fair points here. I know John Gonzalez is out there lurking, and he's kind of feels the same way. Mets are cursed, and what do you guys make of all this? That comment.
Yeah, I mean, if they can, sure. It just depends on how bad the injury is, right? If it's something that needs the 4 to 6 weeks, then listen, the Mets are going to do it. They're not going to rush, anybody back this early in the season, obviously, right? So I think they're going to take as much time as possible to bring him back. If it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it's just something that he might have to rest a few days, a week, and he'll be back, 100%. But they won't rush him back. So if it takes 4 to 6 weeks, that's what it'll take.
Yeah, we'll know more tomorrow. So until we're just speculating, but hopefully it's not that bad, and whatever time it takes, they're not going to rush him back. So I'm not too worried about that.
All right, Carlos also says here, Mets have at least 3 guys ready for time in the majors. That's a fair point. Also, want to jump in and give a WBC baseball update. It is 5-4 Mexico over Puerto Rico. So, if you are one of the people that is watching that, obviously a busy time in the world of sports right now. You want to count wrestling as well, you can. But last month, I remember on the show, there's nothing going on, nothing to talk about. But now you got March Madness, you got the NHL playoff chase, you got NBA, you got Major League Baseball, WBC, WrestleMania. So you got a lot of stuff going on out there, and certainly
the winner will play Japan in one of the semifinals.
All right. Well, we'll certainly have a big update and discussion on that, as Japan won yesterday against Italy 9-3, and Shohei Ohtani's got 2 wins already in the WBC. I mean, certainly that and Joey Bostrom wants to jump in. Yes, we have a lot to talk about. And did you see Creed 3, Joey, as well? I'm sure we can throw that out there. As far as pitching, play the young pitchers and find out if these kids are worth the minor spot.
Fair. I mean, right now there's only one spot up for grabs, and that's the 5th spot. And I think that's going to go to David Peterson. And I think you're going to start Tyler McGill in AAA. You'll have Joey Lucchesi. You'll have some. So you got some depth in the minors. So, and how they fill out the top half of the bullpen, like the middle relief, we'll see. And speaking of the Mets, the game is on Lindor's bat right now.
All right. Well, certainly Mets fans are going to be watching that with a bated breath. And Carlos also wants to say, Jose Buto, a guy Ernest Dove has been speaking about for years here. Of course, he's a fixture on Sportswire Radio. We heard him with Atlanta Braves beat reporter Justin Toscano, and obviously Justin used to have that role for the Mets a couple years back. And Carlos also wants to say, and a few guys, I feel it's time. If you can't cut, let's move forward on some of these guys. Joey Bostrom also wants to say, not yet with Creed 3. Well, make sure you get your ticket here in the next few weeks, certainly for those Creed fans. But he also wants to get your opinion on Volpe.
Listen, he looks ready. He looks like, he could start now, but I just think it's going to be the service time issue, and they're going to wait as much as they can with him. So I think he's going to be here in, whatever it is, late May, early May. I don't think he's going to break camp with the, with the team, because right now, to be honest, there's no room for him. Unless there's a trade coming, which I still think there is, but there is no room for him right now on the roster. Right?
So who would you start short? Cabrera? Oswaldo Cabrera?
Probably Peraza is going to start at short.
Oh, Oswald Peraza.
Yeah. So Peraza starts at short, and then second base, you either got DJ or you got Torres still. So, and he's still stuck with Donaldson. Donaldson's not going anywhere. I know everybody wants to get rid of
Yeah,
him,
the
but
big article I read.
He's
in
gonna
the
nobody
New York
wants him.
Post
He's gonna play
about
third base
Donaldson.
every day.
Big
Let's
article.
right. At
And
least
did
for the first couple of months.
Did you see Donaldson's comments where he said, I could have retired if I wanted to, if I really
No.
didn't.
Would you retire if somebody was going to give you $25 million?
Well, that's why he's still playing out there.
I gotta be honest. Out of the much maligned Yankees, Donaldson, IKF, and Hicks, I actually believe Josh Donaldson's going to have a solid season. I really do.
I hope so.
I think it's still in the tank for him.
Well, the back of the baseball card would say, of the three, you would give Donaldson the edge of the three. I mean, Hicks has been certainly one of the most much maligned Yankees in modern history. I think we're.
What was this again? Not running after a fly ball in left field again.
He was. I think he called off Volpe. Volpe was backing up.
No, it was a ball that dropped by the foul line. Did you see that?
Oh,
video?
that one. Yeah. It is what it is. Again, he's another guy. We're stuck with it unless they're going to eat $30 million.
Well, I got a funny comment from Carlos, and I think he's being facetious here. So let's get ready for some drum roll, please. Donaldson will have a great season if he only plays under 30 games.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a question for Chris. What did you think about IKF in the center field? He didn't have a problem.
Right. He looked okay. I mean, listen, I mean, right now we could use another center fielder, right? Without Bader for a month and a half or whatever it's going to be, you're probably going to use Judge in center. I hope they don't use Hicks because Hicks is lost in left. So you can imagine in center, it's just that much worse. Cabrera actually played
Cabrera in left field.
Yeah, I think.
Who plays right field? Do you have to force Giancarlo into the field every day?
Not every day. I think they want to get him in.
So who's your fourth outfielder? If there's no Bader to start the year, which there won't be, and you're going to play Judge primarily in center field, who's your fourth outfielder? Because you're going to have Oswald Cabrera,
right?
You're going to have Stanton on a part-time basis as DH, part-time as a right fielder,
right? Probably a couple of games a week. He'll be in right field. Figure 2 games a week.
So So then who's that other outfielder?
Well, they got a couple of guys in camp, right? You got Florial, who's got no more options left. So if they believe in him, they'll bring him up for a month.
Either put him on waivers or bring him north.
Right. Either him or you got 2 other guys in camp. Willie Calhoun. I don't think it's going to be him because he's not so good in the field.
Yeah, Willie Calhoun's a name we've heard before out there.
Yeah, and Ortega, the guy that was on the Cubs last year, the year before, if you remember him.
Yes.
Rafael Ortega.
Yep.
You got him also in camp. He's been doing okay. So I could see him or Florio because they could both play multiple positions out there. So I'm gonna guess it's one of those 2 guys they're gonna bring up.
Okay.
All right. I got a couple more comments here from Carlos. He also says IKF going to stay put to play catcher, infield, and outfielder. He also says here, this guy will be stretched more than a 90s Armstrong doll. Is that IKF or Josh Donaldson here? Also, LeMahieu will be there somewhere. Perez will platoon as the outfielder. Also, John Gonzalez and Anthony Finkel here are with us. Anthony Finkel definitely out there on the road. He says, what's up, fellas? Checking in from I-95. Certainly don't crash on us. I know you don't have a college basketball bracket, so you luckily don't have to worry too much about that, but do be safe out there on the road. My good friend out there from the friendly confines from Kings County, although I'm not quite sure if he's a resident of Kings County these days, but I'll certainly leave that to the powers that be. John Gonzalez goes on here. That goddamn brute force Brad Weiss, he cursed the Mets with me, came out with this confidence boast at the time. The Mets were like 20 games ahead of the Braves. It's been downhill ever since. I'll tell you what, John. I mean, Brad Weiss, of all people, we'll hear from him in a little while. I mean, he's Mr. Confidence when it comes to the Mets, and Mets fans definitely don't have too much confidence.
Bruce Force just sent this in, so he wants everybody to remember this.
Yep. Brad Weiss out there. You know what? I'm sure he's going to be just as confident on his bracket for March Madness because I'm sure his bracket's going to be worse than his predictions when it comes to the Mets. That I can assure you on. Yankees are trying to play budget ball. I mean, well, what's out there? What are they supposed to do? I mean, that would be one question.
To be honest, though, they didn't. Yes, they spent a ton of money to bring back Judge, and they signed a bunch of money on Rodon. But what else did they really do this offseason?
Right. Just
Not a whole
basically
lot.
bringing back Rizzo.
Well, I mean, if you listen to the Pinstripe Chronicles, I mean, Bobby Tats and Donald Stewart have been yelling at the top of their lungs that basically this is the same Yankee team. We didn't really do anything. We got one pitcher, and
But think about it. This was also a team that made it to the ALCS last year. And think about it also, we were out basically a third of our lineup going into that ALCS. So if you give me a healthy DJ, a healthy Benintendi last year, and a healthy Matt Carpenter, and a healthy Giancarlo Stanton, right, for the ALCS, we're not getting swept in that. I'm not going to.
I think Matt Carpenter was the guy that you just brought up. I mean, here was a guy that literally came out of nowhere and was doing his own impersonation of Babe Ruth. And I mean, Roger Maris. I mean, certainly he was given a run for money, home runs per at bat for a little while.
Listen, I'm not defending Cashman at all either. I thought he should have did a little bit more, but bringing back the guys that we had that got you to the ALCS, that's not a bad. That's not horrible. Yeah, I would have liked to have added one or two more pieces, but listen, this is not the team that we see right now. This is not the team that's going to be in, starting in October. So there's going to be moves during the season, just like you guys. Like I said, you guys are going to make moves too. So I'm not concerned about it yet. Come August, if we didn't make a big move or two, I'd be a little upset. But I'm expecting moves later in the season, just like with you guys.
Well, we'll certainly find out. I want to give a couple of big shout-outs, obviously, to Anastasia Riznia, all the way out there in the state of California. Actually, I shouldn't say this. Well, I'm going to say it because we're on the air. I'm sure she'll kill me for saying this, but she was actually a classmate out at San Diego State University with a guy named Marshall Falk. You might have heard of him, but she was actually classmates with him. Yep,
wow.
a long time ago. Yep, big shout out to her. I'm sure she's going to be very mad that I brought that up. Also, big shout out to Joe Dell, legendary Joe Dell, who's got his music out there played by Maria Melito out there. A couple of more comments here. Well, before we get to some plugs. These MLB teams having health issues, maybe 100 plus games is too much. And John Gonzalez, which I know he's chomping at the bit for the Brew Force Brad Weiss to come on here and talk some college basketball. Here's an example for you. The Brew Force had confidence in Purdue winning the tournament. They just lost to FDU, a number 16 seed, and Fairleigh Dickinson University, which I actually have two connections to. The first connection is way back, he's no longer the baseball manager, but I actually was friends with the baseball manager there, Rob DeToma. Rob DeToma was a guy here that had a couple of players actually from Staten Island. I had interviewed him way back on the old SoundCloud days of the Sports Report, no longer at FDU. And also Tobin Anderson, the current coach, actually has some connections because he was a D3 coach for many years. And some of the guys I know very well, like Mike McSloy with the Brew Force, certainly had as a coach for a year. Ryan Highland, who's come on here, I think 5 times on the Sportswire radio. So we have a little bit of a connection to Tobin Anderson. He'll be a topic for us next week when we cover college basketball and some of our locals. The Brew Force and I will club at the end of the show, but certainly big shout outs to John. He's chomping at the bits for the Brew Force. Also, Joe says thank you. And also, maybe it's time to make the MLB league make 2 seasons. What do you guys make of that? I guess a 2-season MLB league. All right. And Joe Dell wants to say, did we talk Mets injuries yet? Yep, we spoke quite a bit about it, actually, Joe. We recapped the news about Edwin Diaz is out for the season, and Brandon Nimmo, certainly we're waiting to see. It doesn't sound like too serious when it comes to him. And also, we have a score update. Mexico has advanced over Puerto Rico, so Mexico is going to the semifinals. We know that Japan is in it also. We know that Cuba is in the semifinals, and we wait to see the United States plays tomorrow night, 7 o'clock against Venezuela. And so that'll be certainly an interesting matchup there. It'll be on Fox in Miami. So certainly we'll look forward to all that. And if you are on Sportswire Radio, I would hope you give us a like and follow on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. Closing on 600 followers, getting a lot of new followers left and right. Really appreciate that. Also, YouTube got some new subscribers of late. You can catch us on YouTube at Sportswire Radio. You can relive some of the different shows. I want to thank also the GT Ministries promotion because they allowed us to get some access. We posted a video which went viral on Facebook and Instagram. So I want to thank the company there, Mr. Gareth Angel, the former world champion, and Connor Cage of Nonstop Action Wrestling for allowing us to be first to show their videos. If you also want to hear all the great content we have, like the baseball banter, like the Liftoff Jets, the Talking Rivals, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. So obviously we're one of the few places out there. You might catch us live on Facebook, but we're probably the only place out there that actually has a radio dial. So if you want to have your podcast posted, you can always play it with us here, sportnarium.com/play it free of charge. We certainly cover all that. We give you the access. You can play it out there so your friends and family can hear yourself on the radio. And also want to give a big shout out to our DJ 80, who returned this past Sunday, played some new music for us, and he's going to be back in the fold. Also, Dale, our original DJ from the old Sportnarium days, is on the way back, so I appreciate that. And he'll also be back Sunday evening, afternoon, New York time, with Sammy Rice of the Wrestling Appreciation Society. Sammy was in a quote-unquote medically induced coma, and he is now, all of a sudden, he's back. He's ready to go and certainly ready to referee. I look forward to speaking with Sammy. But in the meantime, we are here on Sportswire Radio talking all things related to the world of sports. And Carlos says, Brute, it's okay. My perfect bracket busted with a Wildcat exit. Come on, Arizona. Yeah, Arizona, Purdue. We'll definitely get to that for sure. And Joey Bosham says, sorry I couldn't be on tonight. My Wi-Fi is down, but I love watching. I really appreciate that here for sure. So I'm going to go here and WBC, because I know Rob Morosky, you're the baseball guy, and I'm going to go into college basketball when Brad Weiss comes on here, because I know a lot of people are waiting for that. So, WBC, what do you think the USA does here? Does the USA win it, or is Japan the favorites, or what do you guys make here of who wins this here in the WBC?
Japan, I'll tell you, Japan looks good. United States, though, the USA has such a great lineup. That game against Canada, finally, that they broke out. The bats were silent before that, but they broke out. And then they had a close game the night Diaz got hurt too. So the bats, if the bats are doing what they did against Canada, they have a good shot. But Japan, I'll tell you, Ohtani is he's just amazing.
We're never going to see anything like this again. He hits, he pitches. I mean, this is just, really special.
He's just amazing. And the WBC it's just not going to stop, because they want Major League Baseball wants baseball all over the world. They want those dollars. They're making money off of this. So it's just not going to end. So now I'm enjoying it. And I'm into it this year. So
yeah, you're into it. I mean, other years you were like, I don't know, I wasn't into it. We've obviously been on the air a long time on sports. So I remember the first time we had this. Well, I like it, but But you've been really, really a go-getter with it in terms of just the overall coverage.
Year, I've been watching a lot of the games. So yes, I'm definitely into it.
And what do you guys, both of you guys here, think about the U.S.'s chances here in coming out winning this year? What do you guys make of the U.S. right now?
Well, they got themselves a tall task. I mean, Venezuela did very well in the pool play. Obviously, they're the winners of Pool D, I believe it was, or Pool C, whatever the opposite of the U.S. one was, the one that Puerto Rico finished second in. But listen, I'll put the U.S. up against anybody. That lineup it's just a tremendous lineup. There is a big concern for their pitching, but I do like the fact that we got a bulldog on the mound tomorrow. Lance Lynn takes the ball, so I'll continue to give the USA a shot against anybody, even the great Japan. And there was a surprise to not see the Dominican Republic make it, but they lost the game early and in the tournament, and I believe they lost to Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken, and then they ended up losing to Puerto Rico, and basically it was an elimination game at the end of the pool play. So they were heavy favorites, and so were Japan. Japan's held serve so far. And, that game against Mexico is going to be a tremendous game. It's where Mexico's run might end. But, I'll still put the U.S. up against anybody.
What do you think here, Chris? Give me your thoughts on the U.S. and their chances.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That lineup for USA is as good as anybody's in the tournament. Japan's probably going to be I would think they're the favorites now. Yeah. So I think that's going to be the team that they got to worry about. I think they'll take care of what is it, Venezuela we're playing tomorrow.
Yes.
I think we're gonna. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a problem with them tomorrow. It'll be a tight game, but I think we'll win it. But Japan's gonna be Japan just looks. That's another team, just one after another. You could tell, just great at bats when you watch their games. Good pitching. That to me is the deepest team in the whole tournament. That's where I think if we have a weakness, I don't know about a weakness, but not as strong as Japan is the pitching. Japan, like our pitching is good, but that's where we might lose it with our pitching. But if our lineup could save us, that's great. We just got to keep scoring runs, but that's where it's going to get tough against Japan because they got some really good pitching.
All right, well, we'll certainly see what happens. Obviously, a lot to look forward to when it comes to the WBC. Certainly, we're getting closer to baseball opening day. I know the Brute Force Brad Weiss is actually going to be down there 2 weeks from today. He's going to be down there watching the Mets and Marlins, and he claims that he's going to be live reporting from down the field here. And also, Joey Bostrom wants to comment here and says, been listening to the WBC on Sirius XM radio. Good stuff. Japan is good. Joey, it's interesting because I was looking for the NCAA college basketball tournament on Sirius XM, and I couldn't quite find it because I was out today, and I was kind of thinking, hey, maybe I could listen to it a little bit. But those are some good points. And Joe Dell, the legendary Joe Dell, has a comment. He says, I'm going to say this as politically nice as I can. Japanese throw baseballs like a Chinese star. They have great arms. Now, these are his words, not mine. I want to make sure that I did not come out of from me, or I technically came from my mouth, but that's what Joe Dell says here. I hadn't thought of it that way, but certainly that's a unique way to say it. Certainly, if nobody wants to comment on it, I would certainly be okay with that. But thank you, Joe Dell, for the certainly interesting point of view here. And it looks like we are about to be joined here by the Brute Force Brad Weiss. But before I bring him on here, Japan versus USA. I think that's his WBC prediction here. So we're going to bring him on here first, and I'll let Rob Moroska hang out for a couple more minutes before we transition, and that is the Brute Force Brad Weiss. Now, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, I'm going to get to college basketball in a second. I definitely do want to talk college basketball quite a bit. There's some news also Chris Bizet sent us about St. John's, obviously, a little bit about the program, also with Rick Pitino. We'll get into that, but, we were kind of having fun. Well, at least I was kind of having fun with you a little bit because, you always talked about confidence with the New York Mets, and Chris Bizet wound up still having that chalkboard there with confidence. And, obviously I'm sure you're aware of by now that the news is that Edwin Diaz, star closer for the New York Mets, is out for the season. I've even heard some say that the Mets are cursed. Carlos Toro Chavez had a comment he wanted me to bring up that he DM'd me before we read off the air on Facebook. We have John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities group running around saying the Mets are cursed. And the New York Post, as I pointed out, also have said the Mets are cursed. So I have to ask you then kind of the big question that's burning on the fans' of minds of everybody here on Sportswire Radio. Do you still have confidence in the New York Mets, even though the New York Mets are going to be without the services of Edwin Diaz, star closer for the entire season?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Because, listen, I am Mr. Confidence, and confidence has been embraced on this show, and it will continue with my New York Mets. Yes, I do still have confidence. Obviously, it's devastating, as you guys I'm sure have talked about already, with what has happened with Edwin Diaz and getting hurt with a celebration. And it's just ironic, too, that the players that we paid are the ones that are not staying healthy so far. Obviously, it seems to be that Brandon Nimmo will be okay, but of course, he's the one that gets hurt, and you're the one you just paid him, just like Diaz. So it is interesting with that, but I'm not going to go as far to say that the Mets are cursed. I know that we've had a bad history with injuries and different things like that. But listen, you remember the word I just said, history. And I tried to take the word history out of Tom's encyclopedia last year. All right, and I know it didn't work. I'm going to try it again.
John Gonzalez had a comment here, which I want to bring up. I want to remind you of this because it's a fair point here. And he says, look, that goddamn Brute Force, he cursed the Mets. He came out with this confidence boast. And at the time, the Mets were like 20 games ahead of the Braves. It's been downhill ever since. I mean, yeah, it was about 10.5 to be exact, if I'm not mistaken.
That's so wrong. I was confident the whole season. What do you mean? Confidence was there the whole season. I mean, I don't know where there was a tipping point where I said confidence and then it just went downhill. No, I was getting confident. Maybe I put it on the screen. Maybe you're trying to tell
you
me.
and Salicata. I think you and Salicata. Salicata was like, the Mets are not losing the NL East. And
I
after
didn't go that far. Don't put me in that conversation. I didn't go that far.
I wouldn't want to be in his. I wouldn't want to
wouldn't-
be in his category anyway. So I hear you.
But listen to me. I mean, listen. Edwin Diaz is a big loss. I understand that. Okay, but the Mets still do have options. They still have a bullpen that is solid. I know that there's going to be probably need for help, but that can come as well. It's not like we don't have money anymore. We can't get another big time relief pitcher maybe at the deadline if we need it. So I'm not overly concerned. I will say that my confidence is still there. I am nervous about opening day. I'll say that because I was looking forward to seeing Edwin Diaz in Miami. But, of course, if you want to talk about cursed, all right, he got hurt on the same mound that I'm going in 2 weeks to watch the Mets. So I don't know if it's that. Since I was coming, he got hurt.
I was going to say, Brad, Brad, you could watch Edwin Diaz. The only thing is you'll be able to watch him, I would presume, from the dugout.
Yeah, I guess so. But listen, I think the Mets will be okay. Listen, they were a 100-win team. I know Diaz had was a big reason why. And it's not like Diaz is just a closer. He's one of the best players on this baseball team. And on top of that,
well, I argue you could listen. We spoke about this on the air. I argue you could have made the case he was the MVP of the Mets season.
Oh, 100%. I think so. And he's not only that, you can just tell by even his Puerto Rican teammates what type of a teammate, what type of leader he is as well. That will definitely be a big time loss as well. But he'll be there. He'll still be in good spirits. So I think that'll help the team. But again, it is a tough loss. But you will not, Tom Bryce, come on this show in March to try to break my confidence with the Mets. All right, that's not going to happen. Still have confidence. Still have pride in Steve Cohen, Alex Cohen, the entire Mets organization. The Mets organization has done a lot of good things. This is a tough moment, but it's not their fault. Ultimately, they still did a lot right, and I'll still lead the Mets to being a really good baseball team this season with my cheer of confidence all year long.
It's certainly not their fault, but still, I mean, we'll have to find out. God forbid this team falls short in any capacity. You know that people are going to certainly say it was due to the loss of Edwin Diaz. And I think the thing that people are going to miss most about Edwin Diaz, no, it's not about the lights out saves. No, it's not about the strikeouts. It's about the trumpets. I mean, I think that's what people are going to miss the most when it comes to Edwin Diaz. I mean, listen, Rivera had Enter Sandman. No question that that's iconic, but I think the trumpets might have kind of overtake that in a way. Maybe not so much in song, but in terms of kind of how all these people, listen, Steve Saperstein, who's kind of still a Mets fan, but more of a casual fan, would actually message me on WhatsApp, and he would say, I've said this before live, and certainly he would say, well, did you hear the trumpets yet? Did the trumpets come out? So people like to hear those trumpets. That's what we're going to miss most about Edwin Diaz. But I have some comments. Carlos Otero Chavez says Ohtani MVP. John Gonzalez, right on time from the Sports Authorities group, and everybody follow the Sports Authorities at the Sports Authorities. James Dolan has confidence in the brute force. Well, that might be so. And Joe Dell says, oh, yes, brute force filling the room with Metsy confidence. Nice. Well, we'll have to find out. Sorry, Jet fans. The brute has confidence in Aaron Rodgers joining the Jets. That means Chris I've never seen something before that's so, I guess, in, out, and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, this saga is going on here longer than, I guess, anything I've seen before.
Have you guys, warmed up John Gonzalez? I mean, he's, red hot already. I mean, he's just going after me already.
He also brought up FDU. So, I mean, we'll get to that in a few minutes. A lot to speak about tonight, Brad. And also, Carl says, hey, guys, help support the kids, Yankees fans, May 13, 2023. 1 p.m. versus Tampa. Tickets $70. Raising funds for PS14. Is PS14 in Queens? I take it PS14Q. Link there. Yep, definitely. If anybody wants to go out there, May the 13th, 1 o'clock against Tampa. $70. Where are the seats, by the way, though? I mean, people would like to know where they're sitting for $70. That's what I will say. But definitely support Carlos and his great cause. Absolutely love Carlos and all the stuff that he does here. But obviously, we'll certainly see what happens when it comes to baseball. Now, Rob Moroska, before I got closing thoughts from you, because we're going to move on here and talk some other things. I know you got, speaking of Ohtani, a contest coming up.
Oh yeah, and this one's a big one. I have an Otani WBC Tops Now card, and I'm giving it away. Just check me out on Twitter at rmaraska. Like, follow, retweet it. Thanks, guys, for retweeting it. I appreciate it. This one's a big one. There's a lot of people who want this card, and if Japan wins, forget it. So they're really going to want it. So it's going to go on for another. I'm going to leave it up for another week, so a bunch more people could get involved in it. But it's a good looking card, already sold out. And I got my hands on one that I'm going to give away. So hopefully more people go for it.
All right, appreciate that. And Carlos says all information on link. Good seats get hot, Coke, and collectible book bag. Okay, seats. I guess hot he means Coke and collectible book bag. Oh, hot dog. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that was just weird how that comes off. My apologies to you, but okay, all information on the link. You'll get hot dogs, a Coke, and a collectible book bag. Now that makes more sense, Carlos. So basically, if you buy a ticket, you're getting a hot dog, you're getting a soda, and a collectible book bag. So that does sound like a good deal because hot dogs, I'm sure now with inflation at Yankee Stadium, are going to cost, what, $20, $25? A Coke's going to cost like $15, and the book bag, I'm sure, would cost more than that. So certainly I am sure that is a good deal. Carlos, we'll give you that to say the least. And everybody follow Rob on his contest at R. Maraska. But Rob, I'm going to give you the floor now, give you some closing thoughts. So obviously, we're going to move on here. And anything else you want to plug, share, say, and floor is yours. And good conversation, some good banter, some good baseball banter here, as some have a show titled Baseball Banter. And I turn it over to you, my friend, and fire away.
Thanks. I just want to say a quick thing about the brackets. Actually, Tom, I won the advanced brackets twice, not once.
You did. Now, when did you win those Staten Island advanced brackets?
Let's see, probably about 10 years ago. And
well, you beat Charlie DBAs. You beat
it was his, actually. One of them was his. So
he won the other one, Charlie DBAs.
No, it was his. It was his bracket.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and Jay Price you beat at the time. Tom Flynn was in that contest also.
So I did it twice actually. So that was cool. But anyway,
that's when the Staten Island Advance actually had sports readers. That's actually when they had people that actually cared about their sports section. Whereas now, certainly they've got like literally 2 pages and they're syndicated. So it's a joke. They've got Charlie DBA's writing like once in a while, and it's all basically bought and paid for, pretty much.
That's it. But anyway, it was a good show, guys. I enjoyed it. And like I said, the contest, you could see it on Twitter at R. Maraska and Facebook at Rob Maraska. And looking forward to talking to you guys next week.
Absolutely. A lot to talk about. Next week, we're getting closer to the season. Maybe we'll talk some predictions. Maybe we'll get into that for a little while. So a lot to get into. And Rob, certainly looking forward to it. And before I let you move on here, Joey Bosham says, love you, obviously.
Thanks, Joey.
Fellow, I guess, kind of fellow North Shore. Well, Joey's kind of the East Shore. You're the farther west. You're the northwestern shore. And he's the eastern shore. And John Gonzalez says he's still waiting for his Ed Kranepool card. I mean,
hey, John, I'm going to dig one out for you.
Wow. You actually do have an Ed Kranepool?
I probably have like 30 or 40 of them.
So he's got to be a common card. He's not going to be worth that much, right? No, even the rookie would be worth. Yeah, he's not.
But I'll check one out one of these.
Isn't Ed Kranepool actually still the Mets all-time leader in a bunch of categories, which is kind of go figure, right? That's the Ed Kranepool. It was like in seasons played, right, and certain, I think, appearances or something like that, which is so ironic. Ed Kranepool of all people. And Carlos says these tickets usually cost between $90 and $100. All right, great stuff there, Carlos. Great stuff, Rob Maraska. And we'll talk with you next week. And that was Rob Maraska, our longest tenured analyst, who gave us a lot. He's got a big contest ahead. He's got certainly some thoughts on Edwin Diaz, plus much, much more. But obviously, right on cue here. Now, the brute force Brad Weiss. Obviously, we see here that we've got a March Madness pool. A bunch of people here in it on Sportswire Radio. I see here no napkins from Anthony Finkel. I don't see anything in particular that, but I see kind of a very, very close race here in the college basketball pool. I've got all of us separated by 4 points. I'm sure it's going to be a lot closer now because of some different losses, different things like that. But the brute force Brad Weiss set the tables for us where we are early on in our March Madness brackets.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you guys all for joining. Definitely has been fun checking out how we're all doing in the brackets. Basically, the numbers up there, I just updated them, are the amount of wins that we've had so far. And of course, as unfortunate as it is, John Gonzalez is already off to a lead. Now, with that being said, I am absolutely stinking. All right, I am having a very rough time.
Not going anywhere, but we're only a few points behind, so you can't say.
Yeah, but I've had some rough goes. I mean, you got a few teams like one of them. We'll get to obviously each little side of the bracket here, but you got a team like Texas A&M that really screwed me. Obviously Purdue losing today was not a good loss for many. Arizona, who couldn't win. I mean, you could just name the teams that probably should have won, and then even some of the other games where. Again, we'll get into it a little bit more where I had some, upset picks just didn't go my way, but the other ones went the other way. So it was very frustrating. It has been frustrating. And it's just the worst part about it is that John Gonzalez is beating me. So I knew I was going to come into this show and get absolutely, blasted by him today, but this is his opportunity. And I hope that this is the only week I could say that I am behind. Next week, hopefully I'll be ahead.
I have a lot of college basketball left, and we'll certainly get into the leaderboard in a second and some of the games. But Joe Dell has a comment. I want to throw it out there because I know he's not going to be here much longer because Rob Moroska is obviously not with us. Some history in the 80s, rooting for the Mets was like listening to Metallica. And ironically, 1986 was a great year for both. But I would disagree on Metallica because unfortunately, as I'm sure you're aware of, Cliff Burton actually died in 1986. So I would say it's a very cursed year for Metallica.
Maybe it wasn't a great year for Metallica.
I don't think it was a great year for Metallica at all. I mean, I know they had Master of Puppets, but Cliff Burton died. I mean, obviously, arguably, I don't think they've ever replaced Cliff Burton to this day. I mean, I know they've tried. They've had Jason Newsted and Robert Trujillo, but if you're going to go from a heavy metal standpoint, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. Now, if you want to say Metallica being cursed is similar to the Mets this year with Edwin Diaz, I would certainly say that might be a fair statement there. So certainly big shout out though to Joe Dell. I appreciate the education though, a partial education. Penn State helped me. Yeah, Penn State. I mean, yes. My God, that game. I mean, the game was over pretty much right from the tip. And
yeah, they were pretty good.
Yeah, that game I watched a little bit in the afternoon. And John Gonzalez, for you, the Brute Force says, nothing new. I'm beating the Brute, old news. You want to say anything to that, Brad, before I get to the bracket and kind of recap some of these things?
I can't lie to you. I don't have much to say to this right now. I mean, listen, I did say
jump in a second. Go ahead.
I did say a lot. I said that he was going to be nervous. I did say his armpits were going to be sweaty and all that. But right now, it's me that's in that situation. So I cannot say a word. Right now, I just got to hope and pray that some things go right because right now it's going absolutely wrong as I even watch and see more disappointment as I watch.
All right. Well, I do have a couple more comments as people are certainly getting warmed up, and we're going to talk about the bracket here in a second. But John Gonzalez says, breaking news, the Herrick's coach has just been named the Purdue head coach. Well, maybe that and Virginia's jobs are going to be open, right? Virginia and Purdue, right, could be open. Tony Bennett, 3 out of 4 years, a first-round exit. I mean, that's another one that's going to be up. And also, Joe Dell says, I meant that Master of Puppets came out, but Cliff was the best ever on the base. I mean, I would, if you're going to just really quickly, not to bore people with bass players, I'd say Geddy Lee 1. I'd say Geezer Butler 2, Steve Harris 3, Cliff Burton 4. That's my hard rock heavy metal bassist. And I would say honorable mention, even though he's not really a hard rock metal bassist, I would say Flea 5. That would be my bass players there. But, let's talk about the NCAA bracket for a second, because I could talk all day about that. But I got the Brute Force here, and I'm so interested here. The Brute Force, Brad Weiss, I mean, there's been a lot of upsets, and I want to frame this in a different way, because you would know this. You were a college basketball player. You had some success. You're coaching now. Before we get into these games, and I'm curious because there's people listening to this that maybe they're not the most knowledgeable college basketball fans, or maybe they are, but because you played the game, you played at a high level, you also had success. I mean, why is it that, especially a year like this, you see these kind of upsets? Is it really just simple? It's one game, it's luck of the draw, or do these teams are not familiar with each other, and that kind of where it leads to a lot of uncertainty? I mean, Why do you see it in a year like this from your vantage point that there has been so many upsets?
Yeah, well, listen, the one thing that, people forget, and this is, hard because everyone's used to the big name schools and the ones that always are on TV and the ones that have all the attention, right? But you don't realize that these schools like Furman, for example, are actually really good basketball programs. They're just in conferences that are not popular, that are not on TV, that don't have the glaring, teams that you would know. So that's a lot of the reason why. And, people don't pay attention as much to those teams. So they, assume, oh, well, you got a nice looking, school like, for example, like a Kentucky or a Duke or Michigan State. Like, oh, you're going to pick them,
Well,
obviously.
Kentucky
Because,
last year, Brad, St. Peter's. I mean, listen, that gave the ticket to
you know,
Shaheen Holloway's dream job.
right. And so, this year, as of, now we got a bunch. I mentioned Furman. We talk about FDU in a second. There's a lot of schools out there that, again, are good basketball schools that are just not getting recognized. But, there's a lot of people out there that are not surprised with them winning a game like that, even though they were the lower seeds. So, listen, I think there's a reason why, too. I think some of these teams that maybe had success in the regular season, first of all, maybe the conferences weren't as strong as you thought they were. There were a few strong conferences, but there were some others that, you could really debate whether or not they were really good conferences this year. And you put them up against the best team in another conference, and you realize that those teams are better, even though you don't know who the heck they are. So, and you mentioned it, Tom. It's something that, of course, another thing, especially with me as a coach, is that you always, it does help when you're familiar with the other team. When you know who they are, when you've played them before, you could scout them. When you're not really familiar with them, you haven't seen a lot of tape on them, it's hard to beat those teams because you don't.
I was thinking you were going to say that because I feel like when we had Danny Burns on Tuesday, and Danny, of course, is a part of the only team in the entire history of CUNY to play in a Final Four. So take a step back. That is a monumental accomplishment. And I think that was kind of what Danny was saying. I'd asked Danny this question in a different way I phrased it. But, I mean, sometimes in a way it's an advantage to these underdog schools like Furman or Princeton, even though Princeton's had some upsets before, and certainly FDU. I mean, obviously, nobody saw that one coming, right? But, I mean, maybe that's the advantage to those teams because a team like Arizona, Purdue, Virginia, they can't prepare for these type of teams, I guess.
Absolutely. But, I think at the same time, you look at, a Purdue, for example, who, listen, they were a good basketball team, but they had their flaws. And, you have a lot of, film and you get to know a lot because they're I guess you want to call it popular program that's, on TV all the time where their opponent, obviously is not, in many cases, you don't see them as much. You don't have as much film.
You don't see him at all, honestly. You only watch him, Brad, frankly, like we would watch him on a stream.
100%. So it is a difficult thing. With that being said, if you're really an elite high-level team, you still take care of business. But some of these teams you mentioned, Purdue and Virginia, these teams had their flaws, had their ups and downs, had injuries, had other issues. Like, they weren't invincible. And I think people just see their name and say, wow, we should pick them. Instead of, really realizing what those other teams have been doing and what type of level they're at. People take it away from them that they're in the weaker conferences. But at the same time, they have had success and they have good players. So you can't forget that. And they're going in as – and that's another sensation. One more thing I'll add is that you almost feel like when you're that underdog, Tom, you have nothing to lose. Like, you go into it like listen, no one's thinking we're going to win. Like, I know it's March Madness, but no one thinks we're going to win. Let's just go out there. Let's just play. And there's all the pressure on the other team that's the favorite to win and not lose and not mess it up. So that's a part of it as well.
Before I get to the other guys here, and I have a bunch of comments, and I want to get to them, it almost reminds me in a small way, I know kind of warming up the band a little bit for next week on Sportswire Radio and the week after, but it almost reminds me of how our Golden Eagles went into Yeshiva when they were nationally ranked, almost at the height of their success. And we went in there, we went into the Max Stern Athletic Center with thousands of people watching on YouTube, hundreds and hundreds of people that were in there, and we wound up winning a game that nobody really had us winning. So maybe that's what it is. Now, when schools like, let's say, Pittsburgh win, I don't really consider that much of an upset there. Or let's say Creighton, those schools have kind of had success. But I mean, these schools, obviously, which is going to lead to the comments here of John Gonzalez. How on earth could Purdue lose to FDU? FDU is 19-15 and couldn't even beat Marymount College. They should be kicked out of the Big Ten, Purdue. I mean, you guys all agree with a comment like that? I see, Justin, you want to jump in?
I mean, not kicked out of the Big Ten, but I mean, they've had their troubles in the tournament. They were the team that lost to St. Peter's last year. You know,
Yep.
They've lost 3 straight years in the first round to a double-digit seed. Purdue in the tournament has been absolutely atrocious. You know, for me, I only had them going as far as the Sweet 16. I did have them winning 2 games, but I did have them losing to Duke because I just know that Purdue doesn't make long runs in the tournament. So I took that into stock, and I just said, Purdue's not doing it this year. And I don't even think they're the best team in their bracket.
I'll add one thing to John's comment, by the way, with Purdue, which will add to his kind of fire here. And again, actually, this piece of information came from the Superforce. He actually told me this. So
I want to hear this.
So FDU actually, by all Division I teams, was actually, as a team, the shortest team across the board of any team in Division I. Where Purdue's got the biggest guy, close to. Basically, yeah, Edey's one of the biggest guys in Division I, and they weren't giving him the ball down low. And obviously, when they, were, they weren't having as much success as they should have. So ultimately, like it's not just on the team, but also you got to look at the coach. Like you have to understand, you're playing a team that's half your size. You got to get the ball down there. Plus, if you understood Purdue as well, like. They weren't exactly that strong of a shooting team. So FDU knew the scout, and again, Purdue did not have the answer. But you got to question the coaching as well, because when you have a team that's really short, not only did you not get the ball there, but you didn't even out-rebound them that bad. I mean, that is a bad thing, and I can't believe that Purdue would do so bad in that situation, understanding that they have such a height advantage and such an advantage in so many different areas. They really should have never lost this game.
I think there's one firm issue though with what you just said. Zach Edey is a very, very soft player because he just seemed like he could not handle the basketball at times, and he's very, very timid at the basket. And for somebody his size, you should be a dominant force. I just don't get that feeling with him. I feel like he's at times a little too timid. There was a couple times he put the ball on the floor. FDU takes the ball away.
Right.
It's the worst thing you can do. Get the rebound and go back up with it. You're bigger than everybody else.
You're taught to do that. I mean, you are taught.
That's something that should be. The thing is that, and again, I'm a coach, and I don't like to say this because I'm a coach, but that comes with development and that comes with coaching. And if he's that flagrantly, not as good as he should be, I should say, that comes with coaching and development. Where has that development been? This is not his first year at Purdue. He's been there. Yep. He should have developed to a point where now in his career, he should be dominating teams like that. So listen, I don't always agree with John Gonzalez, but I agree with him 100%. There were midgets guarding this man, and he couldn't.
Yes, that's what Mr. Gonzalez had actually said. Mr. Gonzalez had actually, quote unquote, he is guarded by midgets. That's exactly what Mr. Gonzalez had to say.
He's not wrong. He's right. And listen, as a big man myself, in college, Tom Bryce. Like,
I know. I covered you. I watched you.
When somebody half my size was guarding me, Tom Bryce, I was scoring almost every time, or at least making the right pass for the open shot every time.
2018-19 season, yes. That season you were scoring. You were making plays in that season, yes. When you were healthy there, you were a very good player. Very, very good player.
Have fun right here and say one more comment, because he actually told me he was tuning in today. All right, so let's see if he really is, because I'll get a text if I get it. If James DeSimone is guarding me, I'm scoring every time. He's 5'8". I'm 6'5". He is not.
What John Gonzalez says if Randy Dillon was being guarded, he could have beaten FDU. That's what he's saying. The same thing.
I mean, listen, I can't argue with John on this one. He's right, and it's really disappointing that, especially a guy who's been in the program for a few years, should have really been developed and should have been doing better than what he did.
I got a couple comments that follow up with this, and I think people are curious about this. People are having fun, but they're curious. So let me get to a couple of comments here, and we'll bounce around off them. Carlos Toro Chavez says here, another thing is mentality. Some of these Power 5 teams try to play up their name, but not their actual strengths. You kind of pointed it out. Once you expose that kink in that armor, it's a different game. Some Power 5 teams earn the spot, but forget to fight and stay on top for the NCAA championship. I mean, that fair?
Accurate. Very accurate.
Yeah, 100% accurate.
Yep.
Joey Bostrom here, who's saying coulda, shoulda, woulda, but you didn't, said he almost would after you. If you're real, listen, Joey, I know you a long time, but I really don't think at the end of the day you were going after you. I'm sorry.
No.
I mean, Coach Anderson and Brad, we spoke about Coach Anderson. I believe Ryan Highland has been to a bunch of different things with him, and we spoke about Tobin Anderson actually in the old SoundCloud days with Coach Allen. He has a connection with a couple of other coaches that we've had on Sportswire. And, of course, FDU years ago when he was the baseball coach, I actually had Rob DeToma on. But, Joey, you really weren't going with FDU. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, you were not biting that bullet. Nobody was. I would love to find somebody who actually said they had FDU. If you saw FDU play in the game, you could see they were a tough team. I definitely think they were a tough team. I don't know if anybody was picking them, though.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Purdue played right into FDU's hands.
The spread, I think, was 23.5.
Yep.
So
to that point, to that point, Tom Bryce, again, as a coach, I can't defend them. They did, and that's coaching. And then that's a poor job of coaching. So I think the Purdue coach has to be let go. That's my opinion. I know,
Well,
and I'm not the guy.
I think that's what John Gonzalez had said a little while
I'm not
ago.
the guy to be advocating for coaches to get, released or fired, but I think this is a really poor performance. Like Justin said earlier, this is not a first-time thing. They've been out of the tournament in the first round multiple times.
No,
well, let me ask you a question.
I was texting with a buddy a little bit earlier, just as the game ended. I said, it's time to seriously take a look at this Purdue program. And basically they've been chokers in the tournament. And, it is time to seriously evaluate the job Matt Painter has done at Purdue, and it might be time. It might be time for a change. You know what? The Big Ten has really struggled, lately in the tournament. They really have not produced some big time results of late.
Well, Brad, I have to ask a question. If you are advocating for Coach Painter's exit, because obviously there are people that are listening and watching this. I mean, would you maybe apply for the job at Purdue? I know certainly you have a lot of experience in playing, but would you want to apply for this one?
Listen, I respectively know my current position and know that I am not ready for that job yet. I do know.
So being hurt by like 60 doesn't qualify you for the job at Purdue?
On a JV team, I don't know about that, but
in between.
Yeah, I got some steps to take. But listen, the one thing I'll tell you is that damn right, if we were playing FDU and I was Purdue, I'd be getting. I don't care what it takes. I'll find a way to get that ball down low and make things happen. So I just couldn't believe the fact that they couldn't do that, and that even to find out that FDU is the shortest team in Division I, and you still couldn't take advantage. It was pathetic, in my opinion.
I was listening to his post comments, Tobin Anderson, and certainly, obviously, congratulations to them. But this guy, I got to be honest, if we would have had him on Sportswire because he was a D3 coach, I don't think he would have been a good interview because the guy sounded like he was like, I don't think he really was like, right. Some coaches come on. We're going to have a coach on Monday that he could talk like Ric Flair could wrestle a broom in Corey Jakes at Five Towns College. I mean, Corey Jakes is like Ric Flair wrestling a broom. He could just go. I mean, this guy can talk. Tobin Anderson, with all due respect, I think, Brad, you would have certainly a better oral skills compared to Coach Anderson, but certainly Coach Anderson, congratulations to him.
Didn't they say, also to add to it, didn't they say FDU won 4 games last season?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So that's unbelievable. I mean, this guy.
This is Anderson's first year.
Well, hey, listen, I'm very familiar with him because he was a D3 college basketball coach for a long time. And obviously here on Sportswire, we've kind of cut our teeth in that world. So, I mean, his name has actually come up. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure of this. Don't quote me on it. But one of his agent, I believe, was a guy, Chad O'Donnell, who was the Capital Elite Agency, which actually represented, Brad, your former head coach, Mike McSloy, and somebody you know very well that you've played against in Ryan Highland over at John Jay College. And I think before he moved on to the state of North Carolina, Nolan Adams was also one of his clients. So Tobin Anderson's a name I've definitely has come on the show and been mentioned here because he's held a lot of seminars. In fact, he was basically, if I'm not mistaken, like the most successful D3 basketball coach over a certain period of time. So I'm not surprised he got a job here, kind of a mid-major D1 school. But I got a bunch of comments here. Let me try to get to them because we are having fun on Sportswire. That takes place with development. He says that Edey is not going into his body. John Gonzalez, playfully, though it might be accurate, Joey Bostrom has watched Rocky a few hundred times. Joey Bostrom says then he didn't trust Purdue. John Gonzalez says, for a rare time on Sportswire, mark this on your calendars. One of the rare times you and Mr. Gonzalez are on the same page. It's a very, very rare moment here on Sportswire. It should be a proud moment for you, Brad. You and John Gonzalez pretty much see eye to eye here tonight.
Well, no, right now we do. But just wait till we keep going to more games. We don't see eye to eye very much. So,
fair point. Touche.
We'll get there.
If Rutgers beats Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, and Rutgers, which most people thought was one of the last four out of the tournament, Purdue is not a number one seed. Coaching is one thing, but this team not playing up to potential is tough. Joey Bostrom said FDU corrected us 4-22 last year. Think about that, 4 wins.
Yep.
They go from 4 wins to beating a number one seed. Carlos Otoro Chavez here says, remember, Purdue asks a lot from their students. In their own history, they have had few athletes, players. They have a few championships in various, but that's a good point. I mean, I guess the biggest known player in Purdue basketball history is it still Glenn Robinson, if I'm not mistaken? The big dog Glenn Robinson, probably their most well-known basketball. I mean, Glenn Robinson played for the Bucks. Had a pretty good career. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but it was in college basketball. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, was a really, really good college basketball player. Good. And Joseph Bostrom says, yes, John Gonzalez, I just watched Rocky 2 with FDU tonight. So let me get this straight. FDU's in the afternoon. So were you watching Rocky 2 like on another TV, computer? How are you kind of multitasking Rocky 2 and FDU? John Gonzalez says FDU wasn't supposed to be in the tournament. Merrimack beat them in their tournament. They got in because Merrimack doesn't have enough years in D1.
That's right.
Well, think about that here. In terms of what Brad said, though, and it's a good point by John Gonzalez, I mean, their coach can't survive this. I mean, to beat a team, like for them to be beat by FDU, which this FDU team wins 4 games last year, really wasn't supposed to be in this tournament. I mean, we all spoke last year about St. Peter's in Kentucky, but I think that this pales into comparison in some way. And Brad, I think you're actually spot on. I don't think their coach should survive after this.
No, and it's good that John brought a point up like this because this makes it even worse. To the point where, like, we talked about St. Peter's, but that's a team that at least had something. Like, you're talking about a team that probably shouldn't even been in the tournament, and they beat you in the first round. And once again, to get to the point that Justin made earlier, once again, this is not a first-time occurrence. You've lost before, and you go from that to now this. This is an epic loss for a program. You can't lose these games. You're a 1 seed playing a 16 seed that shouldn't even have been in the playoffs. In the tournament.
And they won a play-in game just to get into the field of 64. So that tells you that.
I mean, you're 4-22 the year before. I mean, listen, I've been 5-20 before, and I know that you can't just go from that.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
I'll bring it up. All right. I'll bring it up.
7-17 the final year, by the way. 7-17.
Yeah, but you don't make those big jumps and all of a sudden beat Purdue, or you're not supposed to do that. So that's strictly on Purdue. And again, you can't survive when you've also had a previous history of not getting it done, and now this happens. No way. There's plenty of coaches out there that can do a better job.
Brad, I'm going to, before we move on to more comments, because people are having fun with this, and I'll break down some of the scores here because people obviously might want to hear this. But, I mean, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it. I actually think that last year's Yeshiva team could have probably gave FDU a run for their money. I'm not saying they would have won, but I think last year's Yeshiva team, they were, number 1 in the country, number 2 in the country? they could have probably gave FDU. Listen, there was some really good D2, D3 schools probably could have gave FDU last year a run for their money. That tells you that this FDU team, even though they won whatever games they won this year, should not have beat Purdue.
No,
They should not
absolutely
have
not. We'll see what happens with FDU in the next game, but I assume we know what's going to happen. That they're not. I mean, unless they do something ridiculous, I don't. I think they just got one, and it was mainly because of Purdue and their lack of being prepared and being ready for this game.
Well,
I think FDU will find the hard way in the next game.
Can I throw this out there before I move on to more comments and also a coaching news of note? I'm going to throw this out there, and I don't know if I should do this, but obviously you're going to get 15 minutes of fame out of this, undoubtedly, especially if you're a Tobin Anderson. I mean, do you think, Brad, that some program out there says, you know what, this guy Tobin Anderson takes an FDU team, has no business to be where they are, win a play-in game, then beat Purdue, even if they lose their next game by 50? Do you think some school looks to make a run at a Tobin Anderson, or he moves up the ladder? The guy's already done it.
Maybe Purdue.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was hesitant to say it, but maybe.
You know what? That would be so ironic. And Carlos makes a good point, which I forgot to mention. The Rutgers statement from Joey Bosham is kind of okay, but Hofstra, which, by the way, Brad, you were out there and watched them play. That's a very good team, Hofstra. And they got beat by Rutgers. Hofstra beat them in the NIT. Also, Carlos says Buzz Peterson can kind of do this job at Purdue. So maybe that's certainly a name you're going to throw out there. But in terms of the other scores of note right now, you've got Memphis, 47, Florida Atlantic, 44. Ernest Stubbs, Florida Atlantic. So we've kind of got a little bit of a battle of the Sportswire teams there. I'm sure if Ernest did a bracket, Florida Atlantic would be in there. And Florida Atlantic had a great season, by the way. 11 minutes left. We've got Kansas State, 42, Montana State, 32. 16 minutes and 28 seconds left in the second half. We've got Arizona State, 44. We've got Bobby Hurley's team there, 37, TCU. We've also got right now, currently going on here, we've got Indiana, 26, Kent State, 23. Early, though, in the first half, 5 minutes left. And we also have here anything else of note that the crack staff has given. No, those are the scores that I have here with us. Other games of note, Gonzaga, 82, Grand Canyon, 70. Northwestern 75, Boise State 67, UCLA last I had no problems disposing of NC Asheville 86-53. UConn, which we're going to get to in a second, 87-63 over Iona. St. Mary's 63, VCU 51. Watching that game, Arkansas 73, Illinois 63. Also Duke 74 yesterday, Oral Roberts 51. Tennessee yesterday barely survived. I think Joey Bostrom and Justin were talking about that yesterday in the Sportswire group.
Yep.
Beat Louisiana 58-55. Kentucky beats Providence 61-53. I had Providence in that one. I thought Providence for sure was going to beat Kentucky. I kind of,
I did have two double-digit seeds making the Sweet 16 this year, and I came up empty on both.
Well, a lot of people are coming up empty now.
I did have Drake beating Miami. And then Drake.
Yeah, I think that was the one. That was the one. I
also had Drake beating Indiana in the second round, and then I had Iona.
I know. Well, Iona. I think that's what we're going to get to in a second. But I think a lot of people might have had Miami in the first round, upset being knocked out because of them losing.
Another one of my big upsets that didn't come true was Charleston. I thought Charleston was going to win that game.
I had them too.
Yeah, Charleston also has had some success in the tournament before.
But here's the real question.
Sure.
How's everybody's Final Four looking? Because that's what's really going to matter in the end in terms of our scorings.
Well, I'm down Purdue because I had Purdue in mine.
So all four of my teams are still in. So I'm okay there. That's kind of my hope right now, is that that's still in place so far.
I have Texas, UCLA, and Alabama are my other three. So
I have Marquette, Baylor, UCLA.
Yeah, Marquette's a good one.
UCLA and Houston.
Yeah,
are we revealing yet who we did pick, or should I do that?
Up to you. I mean, I'm happy to throw it out there. I mean,
well, you just mentioned one of the teams that you liked. Well, I picked Marquette to win the whole thing, so that was my pick to win. I have Indiana in my Final Four, Justin. So that was a team that I was very happy to see that was won. Alabama, I have.
Well, Indiana's still playing. They're in the first half.
Oh, well, again, I still feel good about that. And UCLA is there too. So
Chris is the one, by the way, is in first place. I mean, no one spoke about the fact that he's in first place right now.
Hey, Chris, what was your Final Four?
Alabama, Marquette, and Houston, UCLA.
That's
So
a good
you
one.
and I have three of the four same.
That's a good one.
I think I have Marquette advancing to the championship game. I have UCLA.
Okay. And I promised I'd give a shout out to Anastasia Riznia because she is a San Diego State University alum, and San Diego State yesterday won 63-57 over the aforementioned Charleston. So I promised I would give her a shout out.
All the upsets wrong. USC lost today, of course.
Yeah, that was another one of those games. A lot of people would have said, all right, USC could pull that one out. That was Michigan State, kind of a 7-10 game. Those ones are always you kind of figure out there. I got a bunch of comments here. Let me run them out here. Joey Bostrom gives Memphis with the exclamation point. He also says, damn TCU, those Horned Frogs. John Gonzalez says, Rutgers lost in the NIT because they got snubbed by the NCAA. They didn't go get over it. Remember, these are college kids. On a lower level, and again, not to compare, Brad, it reminds me of when John Jay lost in the CUNYAC to Brooklyn when they were the aforementioned favorite team and they played in the ECAC the next week and they got blown out. It was I think it was NJIT played them, and it was just they couldn't miss a shot and they wound up losing.
Here's a couple of issues here with Rutgers.
Okay, talk to me.
They did kind of falter towards the end of the season by losing a couple of games, namely the game against Minnesota that sticks out. They also got hosed in a game against Ohio State, and this is coming from a Buckeyes fan, and we had a horrendous season, and I mean a horrendous season. But they won on a buzzer. Ohio State won on a buzzer-beating 3, in which the refs missed the player for Ohio State stepping out of bounds before that.
Oof.
And Rutgers would have got the ball back. They would have won. So that takes another win off the board.
Yeah, those wins do hurt. Those hurt if you don't have them.
But Rutgers got the biggest toes job of anybody this year.
Joey Bostrom says he's got 3 teams so far. John Gonzalez says my final 4 teams are still in it. My overall winner is going to win it all. So John Gonzalez, very confident. John Gonzalez, as usual. Carlos has a good one. What's Vegas on Marquette winning? That's certainly a school I think a lot of people are very high on right now. Joey also tells us here he's got Marquette, Houston, and Kansas still left. Those are some good ones. Although Kansas, if I'm not mistaken, if they do it, would be the first team in recent memory to be back-to-back trips to the Final Four. At least most national champions haven't been able to go back and even get that far. And he also says Arizona screwed me, and that's a wild pick there. All right, so I'm going to come back to some of this, but kind of still tying into college basketball because Chris had shared it to us here privately in our chat on Sportswire Radio and obviously get the guy's perspective on. Obviously, we mentioned UConn and Iona came up there, but it appears that Rick Pitino looks like he is going to find another place to coach, and it's going to be a little bit more closer locally, and that is the St. John's University there for their program. And obviously, Brad, you kind of have a little bit of a tie there with the women's program. Obviously, women's team was in the 68 field this year, but what's your reactions if it's true here that Rick Pitino goes from Iona to St. John's? Obviously, Mike Anderson was there and didn't quite have the success they would have hoped this year. And certainly Chris Mullen got them to the tournament once, I think, in 5 years there. So certainly St. John's recently has struggled. And is Rick Pitino the man to turn around the St. John's men's basketball program?
I think that I'm not surprised with this news. Even when I was at a St. John's game a couple weeks ago and my players were on at halftime, a lot of people where you could just hear were talking about how Rick Pitino needed to coach this team. Everyone, it was Rick Pitino, even talking to others. I mean, everyone knew that that's the guy they wanted. And I think that, first of all, it was obvious that Mike Anderson had to go. He just wasn't the right fit for St. John's. He wasn't that type of coach that people were excited about and wasn't really doing anything to make a difference. So I think that had to happen. But when I heard Mike Anderson was gone, I knew it was going to be Rick Pitino. It had to be. I think everybody was talking about it. Just his track record, just the fact that he coaches in the tri-state area with Iona, and he's been around the block. Certainly, he is a good candidate for St. John's. I do think that that was the move that they were going to make. I'm not surprised by it. But certainly he'll be a little bit closer, like you said, Tom, to us, and also a lot closer to conversations that I'll be in, because obviously across the hall he's got Joe Tardamella, who I'm very friendly with. So at the women's side, so I think it was the right move for St. John's. I don't really know what other potential candidates could have been better. I think
Tobin Anderson certainly could be one. Hey, after that.
Stop. All right, hold the brakes there. Stop. All right. Listen, he was the best candidate in my opinion for them. I don't really know if there was anybody else that would have knocked their socks off.
Matt Painter might be available after tomorrow.
Stop that too. All right, please. All right, but the brute force is available. All right, please.
Hey, I asked if you were available for the Purdue job. You respectfully declined.
I won't lie to you, by the way. I'll give somebody else who should be above all those guys, by the way. I'll give you one guy. All right. How about the Long Island Nets head coach right now? Long Island Nets head coach.
I knew you were going there. I knew you were going there with
that.
All
right, because he, by the way, twice has won Coach of the Year, done a fantastic job with the Long Island Nets. So that's a guy who maybe could have been a consideration. But I knew it was going to be Rick Pitino all along. I think it's the right move. We'll see what happens. But St. John's, listen, they have the ability to turn it around. They play in a Big East that's kind of got a lot of good teams right now, a lot of teams that have a high upside as well. So, and even a team like Villanova, who's there, didn't really have as much success, but they're going to be back. They're going to be good. So that is a good conference. So it will be tough.
Interesting. Georgetown and St. John's, right? Patrick Ewing is certainly fired from Georgetown. Obviously, what a big deal that was.
I'll quickly say before I pivot over, I was surprised by that. I know.
Really? You were surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised because
I don't know if I agree with that.
I was surprised. Listen,
he didn't.
I know that they weren't doing well, but I thought that there was that Patrick Ewing Georgetown vibe that was going to go a little bit
Mullen St. John's. Listen, Chris Mullen left St. John's after they made the NCAA tournament. He had a lot more success than Patrick Ewing.
That's true, but again, I felt that there was that connection. I thought it was going to go further, but again, record-wise, obviously, he was deserving of that, but. I just was surprised, but I was not surprised by Mike Anderson. I kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, because St. John's, you think about it, they're one of these legacy schools. There was a time where St. John's, in terms of the number of wins, NCAA tournament appearances, was right up there with the likes of Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, UCLA. But kind of in the last, 20 years or so, that the program really hasn't had much success. They had a handful of NCAA tournament appearances, no real success. Really nothing substantial. Nothing really spectacular.
This is an absolute win for St. John's, and not only is Pitino the best fit for them, he's the best fit for St. John's. You think about it. He was going to have other suitors. We just mentioned Georgetown fired Patrick Ewing, same conference. They could have easily thrown some money at Pitino, and you know what? He's going to the right job, and I think that he's going to be able to turn St. John's around. I don't know how quickly, maybe 2 years. They're going to be a factor. They're going to be a major factor in the Big East. And like Brad said, the Big East is a good conference, and I expect Seton Hall to bounce back under Shaheen Holloway as he starts to get his players in to that program. I know he's in his first year after that magical St. Peter's run. Villanova is now trying to find their footing. Post Jay Wright, it was an okay year. Creighton's always a force. Creighton's always a very good team. Coach McDermott has been tremendous there. It's a good conference. You'll get notoriety still, even though it might not be the Big East it once was. Syracuse isn't there anymore. Miami was another former Big East team. So it might be not the notoriety it used to be, but the Big East in basketball is still big time.
No question about that, and certainly Syracuse also going to have a coach that was a familiar face, no longer on the sidelines, in Jim Boeheim. So kind of a lot of these schools, right, legacy schools, are kind of in an influx right now. An interesting time for college basketball. And Joey
Can
Bosham.
I give a bit of honesty here?
Absolutely. Say whatever you want.
Else agree with me?
Say whatever you want.
Can anyone else agree with me that Jim Boeheim was very overrated? I hate to pick on a guy on his way out, but I don't know. I feel like the Jim Boeheim tenure was like a compiling tenure. Think about it. He coached there for 47 years and won one title.
But how many tournaments was he in?
Don't remember, but I know it's 5 Final Fours. 5 Final Fours, one title in 47 years. Kind of screams overrated to me.
How many? Let's debate this a little bit. How do you rate the coach? Do you rate the coach Final Fours, championships? How many of his players made it to the NBA?
It's a combination. It's a combination of all of it. I mean, but you also got to get to the Final Four and you got to win. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, Coach K was there forever. He won multiple championships. And Syracuse is a powerhouse program. He made it a powerhouse program.
Yeah, but Syracuse? But you have to think about it, right? Syracuse was a power program because of him, but before him, what were they?
I mean, no, not much, but still,
what were they?
But still, if you're there that long,
it's like, look, not to compare, but the Islanders had Al Arbor, right? Al Arbor, for Islander fans like myself and Chris, he was basically the holy grail. But other than Al Arbor, up until the 2 years with Trotz, what was our history? You can make the case with Boeheim, right? They've had all these NCAA tournament appearances. No question they haven't had maybe the national championships that Duke has had, Kentucky, North Carolina, UCLA.
I think that matters. It does.
Joey Bostrom tells us 3 title games. Yep, 96 was against Kentucky, right? 87 was that Louisville in 2003. That was Carmelo Anthony's 1 year, one and done, right? That was Carmelo Anthony's 1 year. In fact, the reason I know this is because Steve Saperstein's freshman year of college was at Syracuse, 2002-03. But Steve didn't have the game that Carmelo Anthony had. That's why he tried the political game. Didn't have that much with that.
But 1 and 2 in national championship games is not cut it for me, honestly.
I don't know. That's a really.
I'm not saying he's not a great coach. He's not an all-time coach. He is. I think we tend to overrate him a little bit. I don't think he was as good as people made him out to be.
I would say this: maybe the last 10 years, the success would be so-so. Right, the last maybe 5 or 6 years, the success.
Last 2 years, no tournament. 3 out of the last 4, no tournament.
I just look at him almost. Not to compare, like in college football, Bill Snyder at Kansas State, Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, but there's certain coaches where if you look at where they were, now it remains to be seen what becomes of Syracuse after this, but I mean, what was that program before him and what was it during? I mean, look, I would maybe say you have a point to an extent, but I don't know what that program was before him, and I don't know what they'll be afterwards. That's going to be the big question for that program.
So the 4 prior years to him taking over, they were in the NCAA tournament, including a national semifinal and a regional semifinal.
All right, so
they had a small semblance of success, but early on it was a lot of nothing. More until Roy Danforth was the coach prior to Boeheim.
Okay,
his final 4 years before Boeheim took over was really when Syracuse started. And then obviously Boeheim made it what it is. But, I just kind of I don't know. I don't feel like his career was as great as people are making it out to be.
I don't know. I mean, that's certainly an interesting statement on Sportswire. 1,100 plus wins. He still got that one national title. We're talking about St. John's, right? And Steve Lavin had a little bit of success, but in the last 20 years, other than him, what have they had? I mean, I'm sure St. John's.
How many tournaments has he made just in general? Like, forget about Final Fours or Sweet 16s, right?
It looks, I would say 40, maybe close to 40. I would say maybe 30 something, right? 30 plus. I mean, listen, how many schools? We're talking about these schools, right? I mean, what was Furman last NCAA tournament with 1980, Brad? I mean, something like that. Yeah. I mean, schools would die to have what the success they've had at Syracuse. And even
I got 30.
recently,
He was there for 47 seasons. I got 37.
there you go. There
Missed
you
10
go.
times.
So
Pretty
basically,
good. That's pretty good.
I'm not good at a lot of things, as you can see on Sportswire Live when you hear some of our interviews with different wrestlers and such, and everybody else. But his ratio of making the NCAA tournament is almost 8 out of 10. That's pretty good. I mean, I think a lot of schools would love 8
That's
out of
really
every
good.
10 years to make the NCAA tournament. I mean, you think about that for a second, and bunch of comments here. Let me run them out here. Patino was a great coach despite his controversial issues. Yeah, no question that he could be certainly controversial off the court, but on the court, I mean, look, the guy has won, and you got to give him that much. And John Gonzalez gets an LOL out of me. Tobin Anderson, it was a fun. Listen, we were having fun with it. The Hoyas were terrible under you. Yeah, what did they have? One season where they kind of had a Cinderella run, right? Made the NCAA tournament in 2021, right? It was one and done, and Joey Bostrom kind of agrees. Hate to say it, Ewing had to go. Overrated. He got players to go to Syracuse. Syracuse, yeah.
Right?
I think.
Who wants to go to Syracuse for college? I'm not putting Syracuse down, but if you're a basketball player, there's probably better options than.
I'll even go further than that because we know Steve, obviously. One of our dear friends, and certainly I have to give condolences to Steve at the end of the show. But Steve went to Syracuse, and I remember him telling me it's cold there, it's dark, it's like depressing, like you're in your dorm, you don't really get to do anything. Like November, December, January, February up there, you're way up there.
It's easy to sell, Florida State, University of Florida, Duke. It's easy to sell those colleges, right?
Yeah, it's better weather. But I do want to come back to the point I made about Coach K making Duke just as much as Boeheim made Syracuse. Duke wasn't anything before Coach K.
True.
Yeah. Okay. Better sell, better draw because
North Carolina's Tobacco Road though for basketball.
Right, but Duke was not anything special in terms of basketball before Coach K, and he won multiple titles.
I think it's an easier sell though to go to North Carolina than upstate New York and the Boondocks. Because I know Steve, he went there. I know the stories.
But here's where I could push back.
All right, talk to me.
Why Syracuse has it a little easier? Duke has competition. Remember, Dean Smith was already there before Coach K took over.
Valvano was there. They had some success at NC State.
Coach Valvano was there at NC State, and NC State won a title in the mid '80s. UNC under Dean Smith and then Roy Williams. I mean, they had that thing on lockdown for 50 years. So I mean,
yeah, but
the competition is more difficult in the state of North Carolina as it is in the state of New York.
But I would also say that there's a larger pool.
That's a good question to ask Brad here. As a player, I'm thinking about as a player too. I want to go where number one, the competition is the best, and number two, where I'm going to get noticed the most. Mm-hmm. You're going to get noticed more playing in the ACC rather than whatever the Big East is now.
Oh, 100%.
Right? You're on national TV all the time. Duke,
well, that's what Syracuse
Carolina,
is.
Right?
Well, that's what Syracuse is. The ACC.
Right.
No, 100%.
Now they are. Now they are.
Right. But also too, remember when they were in the Big East was big time. Like they were.
The Big East. There was a period, no question, that you had some great basketball. UConn, Syracuse, Providence was good for a while. Georgetown, Villanova. I mean, St. John's has had its moments. Seton Hall was good from time to time. I mean, certainly he was a very good.
Where are you going? If you have all of these schools that offered you scholarships, full scholarships, right? Where are you going?
That's tough. Listen, I'll admit I'm a little bit different than maybe other people, but I would say that, whatever school maybe I had the best opportunity to play a role would be the one. But yes, all the points you mentioned, Chris, 100%. Like a school like Syracuse, you're obviously going to get more attention and more people to look at you than going somewhere else potentially because they're in the ACC. So, it would be a tough call. But yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned weather too. I mean, damn, I'd rather be in warmer weather.
Brad, Steve, I remember Steve vividly telling me, you're up there and it's like,
yeah,
Zero
But-
degrees
but-
in December.
But listen, even though there's not as many people like me anymore, there is a little bit to me that's like, all right, I live in New York. I take passion in being in New York. I want to play play for New York. There's not as many people that do that anymore. Okay, but I as a player, just speaking to myself, would potentially consider that because it's in the state that I grew up in. But again, there's not a lot of people doing that.
Part of me feels like even to the fact that Boeheim was able to get, let's say, a Derek Coleman and a Carmelo Anthony to go there when those were generational players. I mean, certainly Carmelo Anthony speaks for itself, and Derek Coleman did have, I'd say, a very good career. Maybe not to what he should have been in the NBA, but he was still an all-star and a productive player, no question, for the Nets for a long time. But, I mean, the fact that he was able to get those type of generational players, I mean, I would say gives him something.
I'll say one more thing, Chris, quickly to that point, because now it's actually going to be interesting what happens now. There will be another reason why I potentially might not want to go to Syracuse. And again, this is on Jim Boeheim. I don't really like the idea of playing zone defense. I really don't, especially if I'm trying to prove. I'm really trying to prove myself.
On our basketball streams, Brad. I hate watching that zone defense.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Plus, if I'm trying to get noticed to be a defender, like that was my identity. So to be a good defender, like the zone, not really showing much. Not really showing as much as I probably want to. So that would also be a factor in me why I probably wouldn't go there. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens now with Syracuse. I wonder if they're going to stay with that philosophy or if they're not. That'll be interesting, but obviously they've been known for playing their zone for many, many years.
Well, we'll have to see. I got a ton of comments here. Let me get through to everybody. Syracuse is a tough sale to get like I said, I actually know somebody that went there, and I'm telling you what he said. So, I mean, that matches what I'm actually.
And then by the way, to add to that, my assistant coach at Plainview, my JV assistant, went to Syracuse. His son goes to Syracuse. His family has been at Syracuse. So I have a lot of Syracuse kind of like people in my ears.
You look like somebody that could have went to Syracuse. I might have looked like I would have went to.
Hey, listen, I'll be honest with you, Tom. I mean, Syracuse has a great program for like sports broadcasting and stuff.
I was going to say now for that, yeah. I mean, listen, you think about the people that have went there for broadcasting. It's it's right. Them in Fordham, and ironically, you think about those two schools; they're the holy grail for sports broadcasting. But for basketball, we'll have to find out. Joey Bostrom says 87 against Indiana. Jim Boeheim is Syracuse. 96 against Kentucky in 2003, beating Kansas. Also, Carlos says, just think how difficult it's been for Syracuse football to get top recruits even coach. Yeah, the football program the last 15 years has been mixed at best. I mean. Joey Bostrom says Lou Carnesecca never won a title with St. John's. John Gonzalez said Boeheim has 35 tournament appearances. Yeah, it's 35, 37. Very impressive. Syracuse football does have a history of great football players. We've forgotten Jim Brown, Larry Zonka, Ernie Davis, Daryl Moose Johnston, and also Donovan McNabb, right? What about Donovan McNabb? He went to Syracuse. He was also a basketball player. I think a two-sport player. I think Steve telling me that he was a two-sport player. So, Tom, let's not forget the most legendary basketball player to come out of Brooklyn. Yes, Pearl Washington. Was it Dwayne Pearl Washington, right, from Boys and Girls High School out in East Flatbush, if I'm not mistaken? Unfortunately, in the NBA, didn't quite have the success. But, yeah, that's a good one as well, Pearl Washington. I'm sure there's a bunch of other players. I'm just throwing names off the top of my head, but I'll give a recap to scores here at the end, but I'm going to save maybe Dolan time for next week just because in the interest of time. But I have to ask you guys this question just because it's been the talk of everywhere. We kind of joked what your thoughts would be on it, the Brute Force, at the end of the show. But it seems like he's in, he's out, he wants to come here, but there's nothing quite official. And I'm talking about, because Justin's got green on, I'm obviously assuming we're talking about the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I've never seen something like this before here. I mean, when I think about things, I think about things in the tabloids, maybe Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt. I think about Bennifer 1, Bennifer 2, maybe Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck, but I've never seen something like this before. I guess you might say in this Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets saga. And the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, what do you think happens here with Aaron Rodgers? Is he in or is he out, or what to make of it?
No, I mean, come on. I mean, what we know is that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a New York Jet. Okay, don't overcomplicate this. I know that Aaron Rodgers is the most interesting man possibly in the NFL, and you never know. But I really do think he's going to be a New York Jet. Obviously, via the Pat McAfee show, we found out that he obviously intends on playing with the Jets, and that's a great step. Obviously, now it's all about compensation and stuff, which, listen, I'm not going to go as far as some people on television who have went crazy to say that the Jets should give up whatever it takes for Rodgers. I'm not of that nature. I'm not of that. I even heard somebody say give two first-round picks, and I thought I was going to – what are you talking about? I'm like, you're out of your mind. But listen, I will say this. You got to get it done. You got to get it done. Don't wait too long. You could be a little patient. But, when I was listening to a few NFL analysts, there's an owners meeting in a few weeks. And I think that really should be the deadline before they get it done there, because it will be awkward to go to the owners meeting and not be able to talk about Aaron Rodgers, right? Because you can't if you're the Jets unless you get him traded to New York. You also obviously want to get him, with the team. Obviously, we know Rodgers will even show up to training camp, will even show up to, all these different things. I mean, we hope that obviously he does. The fact that he actually wants to hopefully be here. I know with the Green Bay, with all the turbulence and with ownership and all the different things, that was part of the reason why he wasn't there. But ultimately, he's coming. The Jets got to get it done. Might they have to give up a little more than maybe they expected? Yes, maybe. You do your best to try to get the right compensation, but you got to do it. I mean, there's no plan B, plan C.
Was the market. There is nothing else. Literally,
he is the plan. You're not. The only other thing that has come up, and again, we know how we all feel about this one, and it's not happening, is Lamar Jackson. It's the only thing, but that is not happening.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that to happen, because that is more compensation, and there's so much more on the line. Like, listen. Aaron Rodgers is the plan. He intends to play for you. The meeting went well. Everything's going right. You got to get it done. And at this point, they signed Alan Lazard. They'll probably sign Randall Cobb soon. Like they're going to do what it takes for this guy. They got to get him in. I don't care what I'm not the guy who's going to say, "Oh, just do whatever." But I will say you have to get it done, and you can't wait forever. You got to do it. You can't just wait until like June or July to do it. Do it.
All right, well, let's get Justin and Chris. Chris obviously has a new Liftoff Jet Show, which we'll play this weekend, and I'll certainly get your perspective on it. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, when are we doing this, and when is this going to finally end?
Next week.
Okay, all right. Tell me why.
And the reason why is because there's one person. There's only one person in the media that has been right on everything with Aaron Rodgers so far, and that's Trey Wingo. Okay, that's Aaron Rodgers has told Adam Schefter to lose the number. And anything that he says is spewing BS. Rappaport's not been right on a single thing with Rodgers. Remember, Trey Wingo was the one who first had it that there was permission for the Jets to speak with the Packers about Aaron Rodgers. And lo and behold, later that day, the Jets are flying out to see Aaron Rodgers. Right? Apparently, Aaron Rodgers is going to be in New York next week. I think this all gets figured out next week, and we have an introduction at some point next week.
All right. I mean, Chris, obviously I know you and Sharma are going to definitely talk about this, but I mean, like, when is this going to end? I mean, this almost reminds me in a way of the I can't believe I'm saying this here. Joey Bostrom and John Gonzalez remember this. You probably will as well, Chris. My first memories of sports were the Bronco Buster chase with the whole O.J. Simpson on the freeway during the NBA Finals. This is what this reminds me with Aaron Rodgers, because it's like it's going and going and going, and it's when is this going to end?
I hope it's going to be next week, like Justin is saying, but it might take longer. I just don't think it's going to go past the draft, right? Because Green Bay is going to want some kind of pick from us in this year's draft. So I think it's definitely going to happen before then. Whether it's next week or the week after, it's got to get done. Just like Brad said, it's going to get done. Because if it doesn't, what's the other option? Lamar Jackson? That means we've got to give up 2 first-round picks and guarantee him whatever amount of money, right? $200 million, whatever it's going to be, which is not going to happen as well. So, and you could see a lot of the other options at quarterbacks have been signed already. So now we're getting into the like Teddy Bridgewater,
Yeah.
quarterbacks that are left. So
Might as well say Josh Johnson comes back here at
I'm
that
just
point.
glad you didn't mention
Even
Ryan
Sam Darnold's
Tannehill.
been
Thank
signed.
God.
no, I'm not gonna bring him up. So that's why I look at it. It's got to get done, and I think both sides want to get it done. I don't understand this. Well, they got leverage. They both want to get it done, one way or the other. The Jets want to get it done because they want to get a quarterback. Green Bay wants to get it done because they want to start their Jordan Love era. They want to see what this guy could do, right? I mean, this is year 4.
But something needs to be answered here. How does Matt Ryan get a classy goodbye from the Falcons? And it seems like the Packers are holding Rodgers hostage right now because he went on the McAfee show. And yeah, he kind of was throwing the Packers under the bus a little bit here, the organization. Mark Murphy had those comments last week and, basically admitted that they're moving on, but without actually saying that they're moving on. Be like, yeah, we'll take them back if things don't work out the way we want. How is it that one of the great quarterbacks of all time can't get a classy goodbye from the Packers and just admit that they're moving on? Like he even said, like I went into the darkness retreat 90% retired, and yeah, okay, I'll take my time. Maybe the Packers will want me back. Something changed. They had moved on to Jordan Love without basically even saying to him that they were moving on to Jordan Love. And then, as he, felt the desire to play again, he's like, all right, I guess I'll go to the Jets. I'd like to go there. I find them an attractive option. Nathaniel Hackett's the offensive coordinator. I feel like the Packers are being total D-bags about like the compensation. Like, just
hey, let's
get it moving here.
They're playing the game just like we are. They're trying to get the most they could possibly get for him, whatever it ends up being. It's not going to be a first round pick.
Do they realize who they're dealing with?
Right,
Mr. Fleece Douglas.
Right, exactly.
who might actually get a pick back for Braden Mann of all people.
Exactly. So I think that's what I think part of Green Bay saying to themselves, like, listen, we know this guy has been fleecing everybody. Let's not be, his seventh guy. He's gonna, fleece again here. So I just think they're both playing a game of chicken. Like I'm hoping what Justin said next week. They come to an agreement. They meet halfway, wherever that is. Maybe a second this year and next year a conditional pick and maybe throw in a player. I don't know, but it's got to get done. I mean, at this point, both sides want to get it done. It's just a matter of figuring out, the compensation. So,
all right, well, we'll certainly see here. And before we move on, because John Gonzalez does want a Dolan time, so we'll get to Dolan time before closing thoughts.
Why?
Because
We don't need it. Why?
he wants it though. He's listening. He supports us, and he trusts it. So we'll do a couple minutes. Doesn't have to be too crazy. We have a couple of different closing thoughts. We're actually back on the air together on Tuesday. Looking forward to that. Carlos Otoro Chavez says $64 million is $64 million. Jets signed a lineman, and also here, he signed a couple of linemen, and then they went back and forth with Syracuse history, but I'm not really going to regurgitate that. But I am going to bring it up because might as well, right? I mean, obviously, people do want it. People like hearing it on Instagram. We missed it last week. And by the way, I do actually, before I get to that, I actually do, from the bottom of my heart, I know we've mentioned it all on the air last week, but I want to send condolences to you and certainly your family on the passing of your grandmother. I know how much your family certainly has supported you and how much they've meant to us here on Sportswire. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to extend my thoughts and prayers to you and your family. I know it's never easy to lose a loved one. We actually have somebody also, Steve Saperstein, I have to do a eulogy for in a second. Somebody I actually knew very well, his uncle, was almost like a father to him. We'll get into that toward the end of the show, but I really wanted to give certainly a condolence and thoughts and prayers on the loss of your grandmother. I know how difficult that is, and certainly, I wish I could have met your grandmother. Obviously, your family has been so supportive. I've gotten to obviously meet both your parents, and obviously your Aunt Laura out there. I'm sure she's still out there listening, but I did want to do that first. But obviously, we transitioned because John Gonzalez did want it. And listen, I mean, things are good right now. Maybe you want to do a New York stand-up for your loved ones and maybe for those on Instagram. But how you feeling right now as we get into Dolan time, right into crunch time, the Brute Force Brad Weiss?
Yeah. So first of all, Tom, thank you for that. Thank you guys for your support. I was listening as much as I could last week, obviously, but what I will say is, my grandmother really did like watching us on her tablet.
No, she did. You told me that on the phone. That's why I wanted to give a nice condolence to you.
Yeah,
for you.
and my grandfather still does. So
I like him. Edgar, love Edgar.
Edgar Rojas. So my Aunt Laura's still with him. I'm sure they're watching. So they definitely loved watching us from Costa Rica. So it just gives us another country.
What a beautiful country, by the way, Brad. Brad, I wish I could be there 365 days a year rather than in cold, dreary, damp, depressing Staten Island.
I will say, though, just it's the last thought on this, is that I was there, obviously, for a couple days. And normally it's supposed to be nice and sunny and great. Obviously, it wasn't a great trip for this, but it was also just rainy and disgusting while I was there.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it just added to the misery. But anyway, let's get to another, what's supposed to be a miserable topic, but not so much of one. All right, because the New York Knicks are not that miserable, okay? Now, since we last talked about the Knicks, they did go on a little bit of a skid, on the West Coast, but to their credit, did finish the West Coast trip off very strong.
Two nice wins. Yep.
They got a nice win against the Lakers. And again, this is all coming without their best player, Jalen Brunson. They got that win. And then I thought the Portland win was a really good win. I know it's Portland. I know they're kind of going downhill, but you kind of saw some things from the Knicks, like Josh Hart continuing to play great basketball. You see a guy like Deuce McBride come in there and have 16 points and provide a huge impact for the team. The depth of this team, Obi Toppin too. Like, those are the things that really impressed me in that win. And the last thing is, with that game and for what has been going on recently, Tom Bryce. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this, all right? But I can't say it. But the New York Knicks, I think, actually got a draft pick right. And that is Emmanuel Quickley. I mean, this guy has been unbelievable, Tom Bryce. I mean, one of our leading scorers. He's been, hitting threes left and right. He's been getting after it defensively. I mean, the New York Knicks have messed up so many times with draft picks. And they also got Porzingis somewhat right before they traded him. I'm just nervous that they're going to mess up quickly and get rid of him for some reason, but they can't because he's such a good player. And I really have enjoyed watching him play more than any other player. In fact, I would go as far as say, Tom Bryce, if there was a jersey I could have to get for the New York Knicks, I haven't gotten one in a long time. All right. But, if there was a jersey or something I wanted to get on the New York Knicks, I think I'd want it to be Emmanuel Quickley because he's been that impactful. Okay. I really like his game. And I think that he really has had a huge impact on the New York Knicks. Obviously, Randall continues to play well. Brunson needs to get back healthy because without him, we're not going to really do anything, against better teams, obviously. When we play the better teams, we need Jalen Brunson. He is our best player. He does everything. You saw on the road trip too, Tom, a lot of those close losses. Jalen Brunson's been the guy coming up clutch at the end of games. We've seen Julius Randle fail over and over again at the end of games, and he did on this West Coast trip as well to start it.
Well, you wouldn't have appreciated the New York Post. Was it after the Clipper game, I think, or the Kings game? It was one of the games, and they showed him, and his statements were basically he threw his hands up.
Because listen, Randall can't be trusted at the end of the games. He can make a shot maybe off the ball. You saw the shot in Miami that he made. That's with Jalen Brunson as a threat on the court. With him being the primary option to go one-on-one late in games, it doesn't work. They need Jalen Brunson. So I will say the Knicks are still okay. I know that the Nets are kind of creeping in and getting close to the Knicks, and they've, in fact, have gotten really close. But I still think the Knicks are very much solid for that 5 seed. I think they're really going to get it. They're going to get the job done. Oh, Justin's going to argue on me on this one. But I do think the New York Knicks are going to get the 5 seed. They're going to play Cleveland. I know the Nets are coming, and Miami has kind of still been just inconsistent. They can't find their footing.
They're 3 back with about 11 to go.
Yeah, but I haven't seen a sustained success for Miami. I just haven't seen enough to trust them to come back into the race like that. So I know that they've had success in the past, and that's what kind of holds you. Like, yeah, they've been there. They can do it.
And the Knicks have 2 more with Miami coming up. That's going to probably decide it. That's going to
They do.
decide
In
it.
fact, I'm very upset because when I'm in Miami, actually, starting on the 29th, the Knicks play Miami in New York. I would have went to the game if it was in Miami. So, listen.
Now, do you want to change your flight? Do you want to say, you know what, I'm going to go on the 30th and I'm going to go to the Knicks?
No, because it's still Dolan still charges too much.
Funny you said that. I had a conversation with Steve Saprist before his uncle passed away, and we were talking about the Knicks. He goes, "Oh, it was after you. We spoke, and remember the New York stand-up thing?" And he goes, "Yo, the Knicks have been really good this year." So I said, he goes to me, "Oh, do you want to go to a game?" I said, "Yeah, all right, I'll go." And Steve's like, "Nah, it's too much money. Can't afford it, Dolan."
It's ridiculous. I mean, it is really ridiculous. I mean, my dad, who is more positive about the Knicks than me, wants to go to the games. And I
said I would go. I said I would go, but Steve's like, I can't afford it.
It's out of control, Tom. I mean, you can't get a ticket for a decent ticket for $200. You can't even do that.
That's what I heard.
It's unbelievably ridiculous. But listen, the Knicks are doing okay. They need Brunson back. Hopefully, they get him back tomorrow, and they continue to kind of keep afloat here. But I'm actually curious, since Justin nodded his head about me thinking the Knicks are going to be a 5 seed. I want to hear what he has to say about his Brooklyn Nets, because they're certainly playing some good basketball. I got to say it.
Yeah, the loss the other night to the Kings was a bit of a tough one, but you had that win on Sunday against the Nuggets, which was tremendous. And you guys face the Nuggets tomorrow. It was just it just kind of shows that the Nets are kind of building that team chemistry. And obviously you're seeing Mikal Bridges, butt into a young superstar. And I think that's going to be important going forward, is who's going to be able to take charge of the offense. So, and I feel like the team chemistry right now is at an all-time high and an all-time low in terms of drama, which is a bit of a refresher. So, Kevin Durant's gone, Kyrie Irving's gone, and in my mind, Ben Simmons is basically gone because so the Nets have basically gotten rid of all their distractions, and now they're just playing basketball. And they're playing pretty solid basketball right now, and I think that they have every opportunity to still catch the Knicks for the 5th seed. I know the season series is over; that they finished tied at 2, but I think for the Nets, there's still every opportunity for them to win enough games to get that number 5 seed.
Hey, listen, I still say 5, 6, 7. 5, 6, 7 could still change between the Nets.
I don't know about 7 because I just don't see enough consistency out of Miami that they're probably going to stay at 7. I think you're going to get, in honesty, you're going to get some machination of Brooklyn and the Knicks in some order of 5, 6. In my opinion, I don't think either team is going to catch Cleveland for 4, which allows Cleveland to get.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree
home court for the first round. It'll be some order of Nets, Knicks in the 5, 6 spot. And by the way, the Knicks won the other night. I think that their last game was against Portland.
Yep.
The win against Portland. It was kind of curious that coming off a win, you basically had Mitchell Robinson go on Instagram and kind of create some drama there.
That is true, and then that is a typical New York Knicks thing to happen. But listen, I've actually throughout the last few years, and what's interesting is obviously Robinson just signed that contract to continue to stay on the Knicks, but he's voiced his displeasures with his role in the Knicks before, and then decided to sign with them. So it's kind of interesting to hear that right now. Right after
after a good time, and then you also had the other night Julius Randle going nuts on the sidelines. I
mentioned he was in the New York Post.
What he was complaining about exactly, but he was going nuts. So there was a sideline confrontation. You had Mitchell Robinson on Instagram. I don't know if things are all rosy as everyone makes the Knicks out to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, that'll remain to be seen.
To me, the Knicks look like they could be a ticking time bomb. Now, obviously, the main piece is getting Jalen Brunson back and healthy. That's the number one important piece. And I could even make the argument that even though he's not going to be the one to win it, he's making his case for MVP with the way they really haven't been all that great without him.
And we'll have to see here. And obviously, before we get to closing notes, I do want to bring up Ernest Stubbs' Florida Atlantic because they find a way to pull it out there. They get a much-needed win over Penny Hardaway in Memphis, 66-60. Everybody was high on Memphis, and looks like
that was a bad loss.
And Joey Bostrom, cue that. Memphis losing. Knicks and Nets will fight for the 5th seed. Knicks could have gone 3-1 on the road trip. Yes, they could have, but you know what? They still walked away and they didn't lose too much ground. And a side point, listen, Knicks and Nets in the postseason at the same time. I mean, listen, you could maybe go to a game one day, a game the next day, if it all works out on schedules. When home
Did
game.
did you say go to the game?
You could, if the games are on different nights, you could go one game to a game at the Garden, another game at Barclays.
I'm going to have to get a better job because those tickets are going to be they won't be $200. I'll tell you that.
Well, I might be able to afford that ticket. I thought, hey, maybe somebody wants to join out there. I mean, certainly, we're here at Sportswire. Certainly, we certainly welcome anybody else that wants to tag along. But I imagine, hey, listen, you can listen. I went to Nets Sixers in 2019. I want to say the ticket we had an okay. So I think I was in section 4, I want to say. My brother and I were section 4. I think it was like 160 something for the first round, about 160. So Barclays might be a little cheaper than the Garden. I want to say it's probably going to be in the 200s now. I think that same ticket was 160 4 years ago. But hey, listen, we'll see. Just throwing it out there. There are fans out there that certainly want to go and do that, but there is that possibility. We hope that both teams avoid the play-in, and certainly 5th and 6th seed would certainly match them up. And before we get to closing thoughts here, also want to update a few other scores. Arizona State 62, TCU 54, 5:32 left. Kansas State is close to advancing over Montana State. They're up 13 with 39 seconds left. Also here of note, we've got Indiana 45-33 over Kent State, 15:52 left in the second half. And also Joey Bostrom says Arizona State about to kill me too. But what was your issue with Arizona State, Joey Bostrom? You had TCU deep in the bracket. Is that what I'm missing here? But TCU's down 7 now, so they hit a bucket here. So we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, NBA is heating up. Obviously, Sixers are red hot. Cleveland's right there. Celtics, Bucks. You've got the Hawks, Raptors, Bulls, and the Hawks in the play. In the Western Conference, looks like we've seen a little bit of ground between teams now sort of solidify. We've got a whole cluster, though, between the Warriors, Mavericks, T-Wolves, Lakers, Thunder, Jazz, Pelicans. Blazers have kind of fallen out of it. Joey says, hell of a tournament. Listen, we're going to talk about it more next week on the show on Sportswire Radio. So we've pretty much ran the gauntlet as much as we could here, as much as we could. Obviously, we'll do hockey next week. Randy Dillon will be back. We'll let Randy talk about that at the opener, but I do want to get to closing thoughts. A lot of fun here tonight. Brad Weiss, happy to have him here back as well. Chris Bezea, back from Disney World, I believe it was. So certainly you've given us some good luck, some laughter there out there from Walt Disney. But I'm going Justin Gianelli, closing thoughts first. Justin, want to give you the floor. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? I enjoyed the baseball banter from last week. I think I played it a few times before I went live. Couple of different spots I had on, so I appreciated that. Anything else you want to say? And the floor is yours, and fire away, my friend.
Yeah, good. Good to be back on yet another week. Just wanted to quickly touch upon the Devils real quick, since we're probably saving hockey more for next week. So I just want to touch on the Devils real quick. Tough week against the Lightning, but obviously the Lightning are a premier team in the league, and the Devils had a tough shootout loss last night. Really got outclassed on Tuesday. But you're starting to see them start to get their feet under them in terms of what it's going to be like for a playoff-like atmosphere. You had that big win against Carolina, who actually lost tonight, which means the Devils are still 1 point back in the Metro. And like I said to Randy, it's time, go for the gauntlet, go for the division, and that's still at play for them. And a good stretch of the season could allow them to upend Carolina and have them potentially face a wild card team. So I'm excited. To see what the last little stretch brings. As we close the season, and that's going to bleed right into baseball season. So it's going to be a fun next couple of months, that's for sure.
Absolutely no question about that. And Devils are right there with the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll see how that all plays out. And the Islanders obviously are in the running for a right to probably get swept by the Boston Bruins. Kind of an LOL. Although I shouldn't say that because Columbus a few years ago swept Tampa. So I shouldn't necessarily say that. And I'll have to eat my words. So I don't want to do that just yet.
You
But
never know, right?
you never know. Listen, great stuff
Hey,
by
guess what? And you know what? But the Islanders are tied with Pittsburgh. Imagine
see that.
Imagine they get the first wild card, and
Well, Pittsburgh has 2 games in hand. Yeah, but Pittsburgh has 2
but
in
think
hand.
about this. Imagine they get the first wild card, and the Devils win the division. We all thought about Devils Rangers, and all of a sudden we get Devils Islanders.
And that happened. I'm trying to think. Did that happen in 2007, or am I missing something? I feel like that hasn't. Maybe that happened one year.
Devils in the playoffs?
I haven't remembered playing the Islanders in the playoffs.
Maybe in the 80s. I don't know. Maybe in the 80s at some point we faced off. I don't know. That's a good question. Somebody I'm sure will fact check me on that. But I'm curious if the Islanders and Devils have actually played in the postseason. I don't feel like that's happened at least, or maybe in recent memory. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's
That is a good one.
Good trivia. That's a good trivia. You always think about Devils Rangers or Islanders Rangers. They've certainly had quite a number of wars, but Islanders Devils not really comes to mind. But we'll have to see. Both teams are kind of good this year. Islanders certainly were in that last spot. Although Florida is still right there. Buffalo is falling off. Ottawa is falling off. So I kind of think we might see maybe Washington has a chance as well. But before we get to you, Chris, closing thoughts. He also says, I had TCU winning, but you'll have to see. And as I pointed out, hope you had a great trip. It seems like you had a great trip. Obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
Congratulations to you and your beautiful family. I'm glad you guys got to go out and enjoy. And I want to give you the floor. I'm excited to hear Liftoff Jets. I think I'm going to use that as my opener to my guest Sunday afternoon, New York time with Sammy Rice. So that'll give me some fire to get pumped up. So I look forward to that. And anything else you want to plug, share, say, my friend? Looking forward to the Talking Rivals resuming. And anything else? I know fantasy baseball, Patrick has created a league for that. So if people want to join that, they're welcome to. And anything else, my friend? And the floor is yours.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tom. Great show as always. Glad to be back after last week. I had a great time. Thank you for asking. Awesome time. Great weather. Can't complain. My legs are hurting now, though. All the walking. Not used to it, but yeah, no, it was a great trip. Now we're back to business with Liftoff Jets. We got into it with the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. Basically, what we were talking about tonight. When that trade's going to happen, who knows with what's going on. It's basically a game of chicken, right? Who's gonna give in, and I'm sure they're gonna meet at somewhere halfway, whatever they want. So it'll get worked out. Plus the money too, the figures with the contract, that also gets confusing. So that's gonna slow down the process too. But it'll happen. And then you know what? Hopefully we'll start filling in our holes that we do have. Right? We still got to get another linebacker. We still got to get a safety. We still got to get a center. We don't have a center. So I'm sure there's going to be more pieces coming, but definitely check us out at Liftoff Jets. Sharman, you can catch him, Grown Folk 1980, myself, CP7NY. And this week we're talking rivals with Patrick. We didn't do one this week because Patrick also had sadly a death in the family as well.
I'm so sorry. My thoughts and prayers to Patrick as
well. So we couldn't do it this week. So we'll bang out like a double episode on Monday probably. So we'll catch up a little bit and catch up on the Yankee injuries, catch up on everything Boston, finish up our previews, the divisions, and we'll be ready for the start of the season finally. It's going to be here in a couple of weeks. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to some baseball. I'm looking forward to opening day weekend, WrestleMania weekend. It's a good time. Listen, February they always say, it's depressing, but then March it's like you're talking about so many things. You got baseball, you got football.
And it goes by quick. It does.
Yeah, it goes by quick, and then it's like it's June, July, and then there's only baseball. So that'll certainly come very soon. But great stuff, Chris. Happy to have you back. Also, again, condolences to Patrick and his family. Absolutely, please let him know. We certainly have him in our thoughts and prayers. But we see the leaderboard is updated, and Chris still has not only maintained his lead, he has gained a extra point. So we'll have to see how it goes on next week. But we certainly didn't save the best for last, but we definitely saved the biggest for last, figuratively, in the brute force Brad Weiss. I know Brad's going to have a lot to say. I know some men's league championships I saw there. I know we have some announcement on some guests, on some friends of the show, some past and maybe current, you might want to still say, Golden Eagles. And I've got somebody that sort of was recruited as to be a Golden Eagle, but wasn't a Golden Eagle, is coming on Monday night. So a lot of college basketball announcements to Sportswire Radio this week. But the brute force Brad Weiss, you've certainly been a busy man on the court, winning actually for a change. And I want to turn it over to you for some closing thoughts before I just totally crank here and just certainly blow it over. So I'll turn it over to you, Brad. I don't want to happen what happened a couple of days ago. I'm on with this guy Skulls, and we're talking, and I let out such a laughter because when he was speaking, people were DMing me basically like, does this guy really talk like that? And I couldn't say anything, and I just lost it. So Brad, I don't want that to happen with you. So the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I'll do my best here. Thank you, Tom, for another great week of the show. Thank you, Chris, Justin, as well, and Rob Maraska. Can't forget him. I'd certainly been doing a great job. So I definitely missed you guys last week. I was actually very much considering calling in from Costa Rica, but too emotional. So
don't do that. Don't do that. I
decided to stay off. But anyway, thank you guys for another great week. Certainly a lot of fun and a lot to talk about. So if you want to follow me, you can find me on Facebook, Bradley Weiss, on Twitter at BradWeiss20. My at BWeiss20 page reached 1,000 followers, so I appreciate all you guys.
I saw that.
So I'm getting up there now. So I guess I'm getting popular. So
we're both over 1,000 now. We're both over 1,000.
So thank you for that. And certainly at Coach Brad Weiss as well on Instagram and on TikTok at BWeiss20. So to start here, I certainly got a lot to talk about, but let's just start with last night. As you mentioned, Tom Bryce, our Level Up Men's League team, not once, not twice, but 3-time champions of the Island Garden Men's League. We won again last night in the championship game. We actually almost won by 30. I believe it was 28. But we definitely.
You were trying a Herrick's basically impersonation there.
No, listen, it was a 10-point game in the beginning of the second half, so we just played really well. I actually had a pretty solid game myself, so I'm, patting myself on the back a little bit, but certainly can fix a few things as well. Free throws, I can make a few more, but certainly it was a good game. Proud of the guys. We posted our picture today. As you know,
I saw that. Coach Kelly Dempsey had an appearance. By the way, happy belated birthday to Coach Dempsey.
Yes, so she was there supporting us. So certainly she took a couple videos as well, which are going to come out. In fact, there's one of me making an N1, so that will come out.
That's the first time in what, 5 years? You were at SDLI?
I mean, listen, I know James D. Simone and Jason Getz are listening. I get N1s on them every day.
They liked when I said that, I'm sure.
Oh, well, they know that they can't stop me, so it's okay. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of my coaching, though, with Level Up, so last weekend, unfortunately, I wasn't here, and both of my teams had playoff games. So we had to call in the Superforce, who had to stay back for his work, and he coached my teams last week. Unfortunately, my 6th grade team did not make it past the semifinals. But my 3rd grade team is in the championship on Wednesday, thanks to my Superforce dad who got the job done, one in the quarterfinals, one in the semifinals, and now my team is in the championship. So I can't thank my father, the Superforce, enough for that. And also the kids, I'm very happy for them. We will be competing, like I said, in the championship on Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to it. The kids are super excited, so can't wait for that. One more thing with Level Up. Of course, I was speaking to him today. Jesse Winter said he's ready to come on, Tom Bryce.
All right.
It's time to bring on Jesse, so I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll have Jesse Winter on. But speaking of guests we'll have on soon, of course, Tom, we know that we're going to have Coach Gordiezo back on the show. very soon. I believe it's
Tuesday night, 8 o'clock.
That's right.
He's coming on.
So I'll be here with Coach Gaudiezzo as he makes his fifth appearance.
Yes, he reminded me. I think he's tied for Ryan Highland and coaches that have come on Sportswire Radio. And I jokingly said, well, in wrestling, Hulk Hogan was the first 5-time WWF champion. Then the second one was Bret the Hitman Hart. So I kind of compared Coach Gaudiezzo to Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, I'm not sure if that actually helps him at Malloy College these days or with the guys at the Golden Eagles, but I'm sure somewhere Coach Gaudiezzo smiled with that comparison. So, yes, that's what I've been told.
So I'm very excited to talk to Coach Gaudiezzo once again. He's always a great interview, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about their season at Malloy, hearing more about
they had a good season, by the way. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to hear from him. Of course, talk a little bit about the All-American burgers. We always do. So we always have fun with Coach Gaudiezzo. So certainly I'm excited for that. But we have another interview now, which this one's been long awaited. And we finally confirmed our buddy Matt Hurd, my teammate from SJLI, is going to come on Tuesday, the 28th of March. We're going to have that interview at 8:30. So we're looking forward to that. Matt's not only a friend, but he's also a former teammate, and he's also now a rival coach of mine. So
he was a rival coach last year with the Long Island Lightning. We knew that.
The Long Island Sound, yeah. So it's getting to more of a rivalry now, though. It's kind of just started as an introduction. Now it's kind of more. I'm going into his tournament, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So there's a lot to talk about with Matt. Matt is also a big Mets fan, so we're going to definitely talk some baseball.
And a New England Patriots fan, oddly enough.
And a Celtics fan. So he's got a lot of Boston in him, but he does have the New York Mets fandom as well. So that'll be right before opening day. So we'll definitely talk.
That's going to be a good one. You know what? Matt has been somebody, and I'll let you finish in a second, but we've been wanting him on for like 2 years now on Sports.
Oh, yeah.
So it's about time that he no longer ducked us.
Oh, and he's wanted to come on, but obviously it's his time now, and he's ready to go. So I'm looking forward to that interview, and also Jesse as well in the future.
And also Gordon Schroyer we have coming back after Matt, by the way. We have Gordon Schroyer still.
That's another good one. So listen, we got a lot of good interviews coming up. So make sure you tune in here on Sportswire Radio. But the last thing I'll finally say is I'll just recap a few things. Number one, all right, I know right now you're looking at that. John Gonzalez is laughing at me. All right, next week, I am confident. Let's use that word again, Tom. Confident, all right, that I'm going to be ahead of John Gonzalez. I am also confident, okay, that the New York Mets are going to still be fine this season and get the job done of winning. Not only that, but also being in the conversation for the division, okay? And I am also confident, all right, I can't believe I'm saying this, that the New York Knicks are going to make the playoffs and do it as a 5 seed. I am confident in that. All right, so all these different things. I know John's probably saying to himself, "Oh, why are you saying that, Brad? Because you're cursed every time you say something's coming." But listen, I'm going to say it because I believe it. I am confident in all three of those things, and certainly a lot of other things as well that are coming. So I'm looking forward to all those things we talked about as well, Tom. The interviews, Level Up. Long Island Nets as well. I'm looking forward to seeing them in the playoffs because they're one of the hottest teams around. And as we inch closer as well, Tom Bryce, to our New York Liberty season coming up as well. So
I hope you can afford that ticket, Brad. I hope you're able to afford that.
I'm affording that ticket. They're the best.
All right, good. I'll be
honest with you. They're the best ticket in town.
Brad? Are you going to pull out the piggy bank and take out the extra money?
I'll pull it out. I'll pull it out for the Liberty because they pulled it out.
They
pulled it out of their pocket to get these big time players. So I will pull it out of my pocket.
I'm looking forward to that. I can assure you, we will go to some Liberty games. That I'm looking forward to.
Certainly. So there's a lot to be excited about. Last thing, I can't forget this. All right. Last thing. All right, I got to give a shout out to Joe Tartamello of St. John's women's basketball because what an incredible win over Purdue. I mean, they were winning by a decent amount, but they got the job done in a very crazy and exciting finish. They're playing North Carolina tomorrow, which a lot of people are going to say, well, damn, North Carolina is really good. But let me remind you, everybody, UConn, they beat UConn. Okay, and UConn's one of the best programs in the country. So what can't they do? All right, Joe Tartamella, I believe in your St. John's Red Storm. I think they're going to get the job done again tomorrow against UNC, but we'll certainly see. But I want to give them a shout out because it was a big accomplishment for the program, not only to make the tournament, but also now win a game and get into a stage like this where they can go against a big team like UNC. I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, if they could beat UConn, they could beat anybody.
And you know what? The women's team, I think, wins an NCAA tournament game certainly far more recently than the men's team has, because we spoke about that. The men's team hasn't won a game in the tournament, and I think over a decade, if I'm not mistaken, since Coach Lavin. So it's been a long, long time there. So obviously, congratulations to Coach Tardamella. Certainly, hopefully he can rub off on Coach Patino for St. John's to win some games finally when it comes to the men's program. But obviously, great up there. Very, very excited for Coach Gordia. So always love when we have Coach on, because Coach is certainly he's a good talker. He's got good energy, and he's chomping at the bit to come on. A lot to speak about. We're going to talk about the Golden Eagles, talk about CCNY a little bit. Beloit College Coach is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all the different conferences we've covered in college basketball. So please follow Coach Gordietto, Jason Gordietto. He's also friends with a very good mutual friend of ours, Mr. Jason Facina. So how everything gets tied up. And right before Coach Gordietto, I got to give him a big shout out Monday night, because he actually wanted to come on with us, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out, which is how so excited he is. Corey Jakes, who's the head coach of the Five-Town Sound women's basketball, he actually wanted to come on and talk sports with us for 25 minutes, but it just didn't work out for whatever reason. But Coach is coming on here Monday night around 7:30, and we have a lot to talk about with Coach, because Coach actually was recruited by Coach Matejko. He was one of the last players that Coach Matejko actually attempted to recruit before he left the program, and he had his own right. I think it's Medeglia University NCAA tournament up there in Buffalo. He was involved also with the Long Island Nets. Wade Richardson, he knows very well. So Corey Jakes, I feel like you've seen him before on the basketball court. Yeah, you've definitely seen him, because he said he knows you very well. He knows Ed and Kelly Dempsey, knows them from the Hicksville, the PAL, and everything else out there with Nassau County. So I'm excited about Corey Jakes. A lot to talk about with him Monday night, 7:30. Follow him on Instagram, FTC Women's Basketball. And Tuesday night, the 28th, 8:30 p.m. Forget about WrestleMania talk. Forget about the Final Four. Forget about Brad and Dolan time. Matt Hurt making his long-awaited debut to Sportswire Radio. Where has the time passed? We have a lot to talk about with you, buddy. Obviously, your decorated career, your favorite moments, this team, this school, this wins you've had against Yeshiva, the big wins you've had, whether it's a who's who of programs, John Jay back-to-back years, and York, you name him. He's certainly 22 wins in the Skyline Conference the last 2 years. Oh, by the way, one of the greatest three-point shooters in the school's history. Want to make sure I make that clear. So a lot to talk about with Matt Hurt. I like to call Money Matt Hurt. We're going to have a lot to talk about. I have a feeling he's going to be just as much money on the mic as he was with the three-point shot. So looking forward to that one. Please, everybody follow him on Instagram. A lot to be excited for on Sportswire Radio. But before I do get out of here, I do want to give, unfortunately, some sad condolences to Steve Saperstein. Obviously, Steve's uncle, if you followed it on Facebook, his uncle Alan Saperstein had passed away. And Alan Saperstein was actually somebody that I was actually very, very close to. And Alan Saperstein was really a big supporter of Steve in a lot of different ways. He was almost kind of like the sixth man of all the Team Saperstein staff and the campaigns, and especially our very successful win in the Democratic primary last year. I really felt Alan was kind of the glue. His support, just his good words. He always had so much great things to say about us on Sportswire. Was a big fan of ours, and always say how much I was a good man, a good guy. And Steve and I knocked on thousands and thousands of doors together. We made a lot of phone calls together out there in the campaign, and Alan was a big part of all the campaigns, and he was just a good man. And I'm really going to miss him. And it's kind of sad because I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And Steve had mentioned not too long ago that Alan had said hello and was really wanting to see me. And I just, unfortunately, didn't get a chance to see him. I was speaking with some of the staff, had spoke about this. And I know one of the staffers just broke down on a phone call a couple of days ago. So you never like saying these, goodbyes and condolences. Obviously, Brad, your grandmother was part of that. But Alan just, going with us, and was kind of sad because he actually beat COVID. He got COVID very early on, and we didn't think he was going to make it, but he pulled through. And I never forget the last time I saw him was actually election night 2021 when we lost, unfortunately, but losing him due to a heart attack, just very, very sad. Just a great guy, just had so much energy, and I just want to give my condolences to Steve. Steve and I are pretty much like brothers at this point. So having Steve go through this, I just want to give my condolences to Steve and his family. I'm definitely going to miss Uncle Al, and that's how we all refer to him, as Uncle Al, because he kind of was like an uncle. You ever remember the Munsters and Grandpa Lewis? That was kind of like he was like Uncle Al almost in that way. But I definitely want to give my condolences to Steve on the loss of Alan Saperstein, and of course Steve, a big supporter of ours. He's been on Sportswire many times, been on our streams, but I do want to end on a positive note, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, Chris Bizzea, the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, who I'm going to see Tuesday night with Coach Gordieso, and have no fear, I will be back on a lighter note Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:30 Eastern Time, with Sammy Rice, referee from Nonstop Action Wrestling on the Wrestling Appreciation side. This one is going to be a good one, and Joey Bostrom says we've been here long enough that TCU came back and found a way, 72-70 in an upset. So certainly congratulations there. So that's one more point for somebody out there, whether it's Justin or Chris or John Gonzalez. I'm not quite sure, but I do want to thank everybody here. And Joey says, I love you up, Joey. Joey and I have been friends. What is it, 14 years just about? Me and Joey have been friends. I think when I was friends with you, Joey, you might have had more hair, right? I have more hair now, and you have less hair. But hey, that's here nor there. But obviously, I want to thank Joey for his support. I want to thank John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. Also want to thank Anthony Finkel, Rob Morosco was with us earlier, and everybody here that has supported and liked our pages on Facebook and YouTube. But if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, I will be back 7:30 p.m. British Standard Time Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Sammy Rice, Monday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with Corey Jakes. Tuesday night, Coach Gordieso. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the golden era, I guess, kind of returns, and then Matt Hurt next Tuesday. But Fridays also 9:30. So thank everybody here for tuning in on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. My name, you know by now, is the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Alongside me again is Justin Gianelli, Chris Bizzea, and the Brute Force Brad Weiss. Good night, everybody.